Oh, I forgot. Terrible.
Thank you.
She told us to.
I'll start again. We're opening the Thursday, June 18th, 2015 meeting of the Littleton Zoning Board of Appeals. We're at the Littleton Town Offices, room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. We have a few administrative, and we have a quorum. Few administrative matters. Vice Chair William Farnsworth is absent tonight, and
Alan Bell.
alternate Alan Bell is absent tonight with excused absences. We also had, the first item of business, a very sad letter I received from John Cantino to my left. John is retiring after 18 years serving the board, and I'll read it because it's such a beautiful letter. Dear Sherry and board members, after 18 wonderful years on the Board of Appeals, I will regretfully be stepping down. September 17 will be my last meeting. I want to thank everybody on the board, past and present members, for all the decisions we made for the town of Littleton. Good luck to the board on all future challenges. Yours truly, John Cantino. And I want to make note that John has served this board well, conscientiously and independently. He's been a strong voice of reason on the board for 18 years. We'll miss you terribly, John.
Thank you.
Next order of business is supposed to be minutes. Usually we rely on Bill for the revisions on minutes. Do we have any? Shelley, no? Okay.
Bill would object if we did minutes without him.
So we'll pass over the minutes tonight. Do we have any accounts payable?
There are 2 bills in the folder.
Oh. So, 8433 for supplies, it looks like.
Yeah, office.
And it's shared with the Board of Health, and it's been allocated accordingly. And then we have advertising for 16428. The wonderful thing about our board is that we don't have any fat in our budget whatsoever. We're mandated by law to do certain things, and that's all we pay for, and that's all we do on this board. So our budget is pretty consistent from year to year, except for wage increases. Well-deserved. We usually get mail about surrounding towns' petitions, and I don't see any here that really touch us directly. 540, there are 3 special permits or proceedings in Groton, but they're 540 Groton Road, so I don't think they come anywhere near the town line. So that's the mail and the bills. Can you pass that over, please? Our first petition is scheduled for 7:30, and it is a noticed hearing, so we can't start early. We have only 2 items tonight. Does anybody else have any matters they want to bring before the board?
Dr. Smith's memorial service is Saturday.
Thank you. Do you want to say something? in
At
tribute
2
to him?
p.m. I think we talked about Dr. Smith, didn't we?
No, we talked about Doug last time.
Oh. Dr. Smith was a long-term resident of the town, a pediatrician much loved by the community. His office was in Acton, but he took care of many Littleton children. He passed away at the age of 95 last week, I believe. His memorial service is at the Unitarian Church Saturday at 2 p.m. He and his wife recently sold their house on Star Hill off Tadwin Road and moved into a senior citizen center at Robbinsbrook in Acton. And Bea is still around. She's the same age. They knew each other since they were 4 years old. Their yards used to abut each other. And they were married for 74 years.
Wow.
So, which is a very long time. And he will be much missed and a true Renaissance man. He did a lot for the community and was well loved. So if anyone didn't know his services Saturday at 2 p.m., please feel free to join us.
And Mark, will you give us an update on the track team?
Oh, the track team.
Yeah.
I can talk for the girls' track team. Not only were we undefeated, not only did we win the league championship, but we won the district championship. And we came in fourth at the state divisional meet, which meant we're the fourth best team, everything west of 495.
Oh, isn't that exciting? Very nice.
I can bring us up to date on soccer, too.
Okay.
You don't have to read the Littleton Independent, just read
No,
the ZBA.
we have the N Cup Finals. We have the girls U12 team, are first in the league, and they'll be playing Saturday at Corpor for the finals for the league, and are expected to go on to the state finals. We actually have 4 teams, Littleton has 4 teams, which is really kind of wonderful for a town our size, going on to the finals and possibly the state finals. So, and a lot of that tournament's happening on Saturday, and one of them's at Corpor with our girls U12 team.
Excellent.
It's very exciting. We have amazing sports teams in this town. For a town our size, we do an amazing, our children do an amazing job of representing us.
We are doing very well. The school systems are doing well, and the sports teams are doing well. Anybody else?
You want to talk about USA's report?
Go ahead.
No, yeah, don't you know it?
No, about the 17th, that's, yeah, I think we spoke of it last time.
Did we? Okay. Did we brag about our schools last time? All right.
So we have 5 minutes. We can take a breather, walk around, stretch. We can't start until 7:30. There's nothing else on your plate, Michelle?
15 Great Road is, crazy.
Oh, yeah, let's give us an update on Omni.
So building 1, the apartments, building 1 is complete, occupancy permit issued. Building 2, probably end of next week, the occupancy permit will be issued.
Can I just add to that, in case people don't know, buildings 1, 2, and 3 are the multi-level apartment buildings down in the Omni project at 15 Great Road. They can be seen best really from the driveway going into the, I still call it Scupperjacks, into the Nagog Mall there, near Crossroads. And the interesting thing is, I've had an awful lot of townspeople, friends, and clients ask me when they're going to be ready. They're a combination of market rate units and affordable housing units. The buildings are elevated, and many of them have a parking garage underneath. So it's an ideal situation for people in Littleton who want to or need to downsize into housing that's more amenable to their lifestyle and their aging process. So please do check it out. You can get information on it on the website. You can get information from the rental office signs in front of it, or you can call Shelley or call the office to get information on it.
It's an ideal location for some of our snowbirds. They wouldn't have to worry about their houses in the winter,
Right.
and yet can be Littleton residents in the summer.
Right.
And, it's really, they've done a beautiful job of building over there and getting it done. I was worried they'd never actually build them. And they, not only have they
They
built them.
really attacked it.
They really attacked it. They've done it in a very timely fashion. They're all rental units, so that 100% of them count towards our quota. It's all good.
What about the subsidized units? Are they having a lottery, or how does that work?
The for sale subsidized?
No, the apartments.
Oh,
I think the apartments, they ran the lottery, but it wasn't fully subscribed, so anybody that applied got in. And the houses, phase 1 is all filled up, and they just are starting the building permits for phase 2 now, so they'll have another lottery for phase 2 for the for sale units.
Any idea how many units are rented at this point?
I don't know the exact amount, but I know that it was a very high number, like 80% they said were,
were rented in Building 1?
oh, building
Sold.
1 was fully, I mean, they had people basically standing with their moving trucks waiting for the occupancy to be issued so they could move in.
That's great. And what about the septic treatment plant? If I recall, they were going to put things in a holding tank until it came up to capacity. Is that now tested, watered down, and everything they're supposed to do is done?
Yep, yep.
That's excellent. That's excellent. This town I think the town took an immense leap of faith on that project. As you all know, comprehensive permits are not something we really have the right to refuse But we negotiated long and hard with the applicant on that one. I think this board did a marvelous job of getting the best project we could possibly get and giving the town an awful lot of housing options for our townspeople. So I do give a lot of credit to this board. We worked very hard, almost a 2-year permitting process, and we made sure that it would be good when it was done. So I'm glad it was built.
Should we have passed around a sign-in sheet?
Yep,
It is going, there is one.
yeah.
Thank you.
If everyone could sign in, that would be really terrific.
Is there a sign-in, you can pass it around. I'm going to open the 7:30 hearing, but I'd like to make a few House ministerial comments before we start. Usually, it's my practice to let everyone be heard and let everyone be heard fully. I expect there to be decorum and no name-calling, just you state your case and you state what you want to do. The way that we conduct a hearing here is that the applicant speaks first, then the board asks questions, and then we open it up to the abutters. When the abutters are done speaking, the applicant will be given an opportunity to reply. It may be that in some cases, we'll go back and forth because a question from an applicant might need to, from an abutter might need to be answered, or the applicant may want to answer. But we'll take turns, we'll make sure everybody gets heard. I try not to cut anyone off. And if we go long enough and you still aren't done, I might suspend your hearing for a few minutes to take our 7:50 hearing and then put you back again, and everyone will get out in a reasonable hour. Okay, please? Thank you. So I am opening the 7:30 PM hearing of case number 855. The petitioner is GPR Inc. on behalf of owner Georgiana Gagnon on a request for a special permit pursuant to Section 173.7 and 173.25 use regulations and 173.26A use regulations schedule, specifically other principal uses with externally observable attributes similar to uses permitted above, for use of the property for functions, rentals, weddings, dance classes, contra dance, and open mic at 547 Great Road. So I'm going to ask the applicant to present, please.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Ringwald from Goldsmith Press.
Excuse me, I need to appoint an alternate.
Oh, thank you very much. I see I missed Bill. Mark, how about, you haven't been here in a while, how about Mark?
I've made the last number of meetings.
I haven't appointed you in a while, I
Okay.
think, because,
Okay, that-
because the last number of meetings have been full. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Ringwald from Goldsmith Press and Ringwald, representing Gia Gagnon and Soaring Hawk Meditation Center. Our proposal this evening is here for a special permit for the use of the property. The property is located about 2,800 feet to the west of the interchange with 495 at the corner of Great Road and Beaver Brook Road, and more specifically Beaver Brook Road and Old Great Road, which is a stub dead end. And there you go. Look at that. We got it up on, aerial up online. Shelley is right on top of this game. Had I known that that was going to be in use, I'd have sent you a bunch of slides. So you can see the location of the property and its location. It's about a 3-acre parcel of land. To date, on behalf of the applicant, I've been to the planning board for two previous applications. The initial application where the property was going to expand the existing driveway for some dedicated parking for the proposed uses. And then we came back to modify that application whereby we make use of the existing drive that comes off of Beaver Brook Road into an existing gravel area and modify that. If you want to keep that picture up, that's a great picture to keep.
Just timed out.
Oh, it goes to sleep every 30
It's off
seconds.
his phone.
Aha, and it's your phone and not Shelley's. Sorry, Shelley, I was giving you.
I know I got credit where it wasn't deserved.
All right, so the location here in this existing. The application is initially for a wellness center, a mindfulness, kind of some holistic healing, some meditation, and additional uses at the site. That approach to the property is still the underlying approach to the use of the property, and it shouldn't be lost in any of this discussion this evening. The issue is that the owner of the property wishes to be in control of the property, being on-site during activities. And at the time, she was looking to have a partner practitioner go in and live on the property so that they were there to caretake and oversee things. During the process of architectural design and the process for moving forward, there are very rigid building codes, as you're well aware of, that cause separation between various use groups. And a residential use group within a commercial use group, especially an assembly use group, have very strict requirements. The residential portion was going to be on the upper level, and the biggest problem with that is access and egress, and there has to be an exterior access from the outside, as she found out, and those issues were such that they were going to create and deteriorate from the appearance of the old farmhouse, the poor farmhouse, which she is very attached to and wishes to maintain. So the idea of having a partner, a resident on site, came away from the site, and the ability and the desire to use and rent out small spaces became problematic because there would have to have been an elevator put in internally, and so that came away from the site. So what we're here for is, as it was read before, is a special permit for other principal uses with external observable attributes similar to the uses permitted above. And above is, this is a quote from the use table of the zoning bylaw, and it's talking about other uses above that line within that use bylaw. And other uses that are permitted in this industrial A district are hotel, let me just make sure if I get this straight, I don't want to read wrong here. The ability for hotel use, restaurants, I'm sorry, I've lost my place here. So those uses are very similar to allowing for functions that she wishes to add to this. And as stated, the functions she wishes to add are things such as contra dance lessons, music as in an open mic, and then the use of weddings. To have functions to allow for a Saturday wedding or a Friday evening function on the space. And with that use and the uses of her site, the parking needed to expand from the original about 10, 12 spaces. We've expanded to 30 parking spaces. We've taken the 7 spaces that we had in the rear and added another 6. So we have 13 off the existing gravel drive, and within the existing gravel footprint, matter of fact, using less of that gravel footprint than exists today for that parking out back. So we'll be creating lawn area and landscaping within that area. Off of the driveway, we've added spaces so that we get an additional, I think it's 16 out front, 17 out front, 5 in front of the building, 4 in front of the barn portion of the building, and 3 across from it. So we have 30 parking spaces on the property. These 30 parking spaces that are on the property, the applicant feels are necessary for the wellness activities that she wishes to propose, and she has already gotten permits for. The space within the building she wishes to modify for those uses, the uses that she has permits for today, and that includes an expansion and access from the back of the building, from the parking off of Beaverbrook Road, for handicap access, accessible access into the building. That includes an expansion of the area within the alcove between the house proper and the shed wing prior to the existing garage. And that includes removing the existing garage barn portion, which is within all the setbacks, and rotating it at 90 degrees, but keeping it within the shadow of the existing building to make a larger meditation and assembly room space in this area. This is roughly 32 by 42, if memory serves me correctly, and I'll come back to that. The reason for this change in access for accessibility was because if you come in the driveway, and if you're aware of it, and you can kind of see in the front there, there's a farmer's porch across the front, which is essentially 1 story above the existing driveway. And it would require an elevator or a scissor lift. Those of you that are familiar with elevators and scissor lifts, in the wintertime, they're very hard to keep open and accessible and usable. So that area we pulled away from, and that's why we initially brought the driveway and access around to make use of the driveway and access in the back. This building has a lot of history in town. The site dates way back. The building's been there for a long time. It was at one point the poorhouse. At one point, town jail was in the basement. This building is on the cover of The Poorhouses of Massachusetts, a book that's widely circulated amongst folks of those types. The owner, Gia Gagnon, has really fallen in love with the property and for the uses that she proposes here, and wishes to expand upon the uses that came out of this site as a use for the community, and continue it as a use for the community. So I talked about previously the other uses that are similar to the uses that she wishes to propose in this. Again, a motel, hotel, conference center are permitted within an industrial A district. They offer function space and rental space of various activities like weddings and dances. Restaurants are permitted within the industrial A district. She's not proposing to have a restaurant, but with other activities they may be catered. Any food on this property would be prepared off-site, brought to site, served on-site, kept within a warming area within a little kitchenette space, and then served and taken off-site and all cleaned off-site. To address some of the other concerns that I know are not before this board, but just so you have some background, we are in the Aquifer Protection District. We are outside of the Zone 1 district, the Zone 2 district rather, for a well that's downgrading a good distance. And we're proposing the use here of composting toilets. Composting toilets are approved by DEP. Clivus, New England is right here in Lowell, Massachusetts, and they're one of the leaders in composting toilets. They run through some people think of composting toilets and they think of the big, huge hole that they see dropping down, but these are a nice 4-inch hole like in the bottom of your toilet, and it has a foam system that works with it. It flows downstairs into composters in the basement, and there's 2 smaller, bigger ones that would be upstairs that would flow down into the basement. All that is contained within a self-contained, approved by DEP, would have to get local approvals by the Board of Health. There would be no nitrogen deposit on the site. The only water use that will go into this very large septic system that's on the property would be that from washing your hands and rinsing a glass in the sink. And all the faucets will be on timers. As you go into a restroom, you push down the nozzle and it runs for a short period of time while you wash your hands. The application, when we submitted it, the applicant was looking at, trying to feel how things may grow into the future, or could possibly grow, or what she could possibly have. She was looking at other sites that were in other surrounding communities of nice old farm buildings and estate buildings that have been used for weddings, and wanted to kind of set up and follow the model that they have and that they use. And with that, she looked at what's the maximum that the site could hold and asked us to apply under those guidelines. And that's what we did. Our initial application is for a maximum of 180 people. When we met with the planning board a week ago, prior to that we had knocked it down to 120 people on the maximum event. We had a lot of output from the butters. You're going to hear from them later this evening, no doubt. We've had a lot of communication between myself and my client and our design team towards what we wish to see and how we think the site could really be used. We're trying to address some of the comments that we've heard from abutters. We've tried to have open dialogue, and we've not gotten any in return. So this evening, as part of this application, I wish to modify the application. I have with me letters that I'm going to submit and some minor changes to the architectural plans that I will submit to you, but I'd like to walk through them with you first. We want to, with this application, we have a list of proposed uses for the site and the various different times that these uses would be proposed. And there's been a lot of comment from folks that these uses just aren't right for the neighborhood and not right for the site. And some of these uses fall within what we have permitted, and some of them are falling within what we are asking for this evening. A little bit of background about why these uses are ones that she's proposing to do. The applicant has a special needs child, and those of us that are parents, when we've gone through raising our kids and we're trying to come away with how we go about getting them to come out of their shell, having them have more confidence in their life, she's found that through contra dancing and special needs contra dances and open mic scenarios, her child, who's blind and has many difficulties, is very musically talented, but needed confidence coming out. And through open mic scenarios now, the abutters are saying, you know, you're going to have music, you're going to have karaoke singing. That's not what's being proposed here. Contra dances, if anybody has ever been to one, is a very friendly thing with music that is very mellow. It's usually a violin, a bass, maybe a guitar, sometimes a keyboard, and a caller. And they walk you through and teach you. Some of them are very advanced and they don't want to teach you at all, but she wishes, when I say dance classes, it's dance classes for special needs and dance classes for learning how to do this type of contra dance. There is no alcohol at a contra dance. It is a water thing. Sometimes there's ice cream social afterwards. They're typically held in various different churches and Grange halls and different buildings. Groton has one in a Grange hall. Concord has one in the Scout building, the Scout House, in the center of town. It's a much bigger space than what she wants, and they have a much bigger dance than what she wants. She doesn't want that largeness. She wants a much smaller thing. So we've modified our numbers in this application from what we had before. And we're going to talk about those numbers as I go through this thing. The open mic thing, she's been to several open mic things. One that happens at, I think it's the Sweet Connection ice cream store in downtown Concord, in West Concord. And an open mic thing is a thing where musicians, and I know Littleton has a large number of musicians, many of my friends in Littleton that are musicians, I've been to their homes in different places to hear them play. Them and children and young adults to come out, poetry readers to come out, and have an opportunity, have a venue and a place to do this. All these activities would be inside within this proposed space, within the meditation space, to be used at a different time for that same function. These are the type of uses that they're after, she's after. She's after a much smaller wedding facility. There has been discussion, we talked about having a tent out here, and the neighbors are very much opposed to that from the standpoint of noise and concern of noise. And what we've done initially from the get-go was that there would be no amplified music, and she set limits to the time frame. What we would like to propose tonight in our modification of this application is a limitation on a wedding, the largest wedding at 100 people. This falls in place with the parking guidelines from Littleton's zoning of assembly of one parking space per 4 seats. It would allow for 25 spaces under that guideline plus 5 spaces for the caterers. That would cover what the zoning bylaw says for that. Assembly does not ask for the 5 spaces for caterers. a restaurant use does. So I've kind of morphed the two uses together on a worst-case scenario and taken a look from that standpoint. Initially, for the larger things, we were looking at parking off-site. We've backed away from the larger ones. We've backed away from that whole scenario. We're backing away and we're saying we do not want a tent outside. We're taking that off the table. We're suggesting it as a condition. We have a lot of conditions that we're going to suggest in this letter that I'll give you in a moment. Mindfulness workshops are something that would happen on Sunday afternoons or Sundays, a day-long type thing. That's something to be within the building. It might be out on the deck, and it might be out in the yard. A mindfulness workshop will include meditation sessions, will include chiropractors, other physical and mental health folks getting together and working on different processes and discussion groups about how their business is going and how things happen. Those would be day-long events. We've listed that now at 30 people or less. The practitioner that wishes to run a few of them, we've had conversations with them, and she typically has about 20 to 25. So we've given it a little bit of growth space on it because she's having a hard time finding a space to have this to occur that would work within her budget, and so this is a space that would happen. The contra dances, they're something that would, the classes, something that would happen in evenings. She's particularly scheduled them at 7 on Wednesday evenings. Again, it's for teaching special needs and or for just teaching contra dances, because some of these places like in Concord or in Groton, Carlisle, when you go to it, she got criticized when she went to the first one in Carlisle because it was such a facility that she felt, people said, wow, you really don't know how to do this, you shouldn't be here. You know, this is for the advanced group. So she's changed out of that, and she wants to have a space because she's found that her children have grown from this experience, and she wants to help with other kids and other people with needs to gain from this. The open mic is a thing that she's set up for Friday nights. She's listed 12 to 24 a year because it's not a thing that would happen and draw people on every Friday night. But it is something that would alternate in between renting the space out on a Friday night if an IBM or if Dover Saddlery or somebody else wanted to have a function for a number of employees, a birthday party, something of that nature. We have an indoor space that's a nice space for that, and beautiful gardens that exist on the property that are overgrown with invasive plants that she is going to be renovating and bringing back and creating a pathway and gardens around all that that would be associated with that. And yes, weddings. Weddings would be the thing that would bring in the money that would allow her to run all these other functions. She's looking at having weddings somewhere between May and October. That's the typical wedding season. She initially was thinking outdoor weddings would be a great thing and have a tent because that's what a lot of the competitors have. We've had a lot of noise and discussion from the abutters that they feel that it'd be too much. People have suggested if we have a tent on the property, we're going to be doing one thing here and another thing inside. That's not the intent. We're going to suggest that you put a condition on it that we are not allowed to run multiple functions at the same time, that we only run one function. We're still going to make this lawn area because it's going to be used for meditation. It may, if you approve this use, still be used for an outdoor wedding without a tent. To sit out in the sun, to be in the garden area, to have your ceremony outside, to have your socializing on the deck and stuff, and to go inside for a reception, for a sit-down meal, and for listening to and dancing to music afterwards. We're going to suggest hours of operation for limiting the time frame for that. We're going to suggest the hours of operation for outdoor music, which we've already suggested be only acoustic and not amplified. And then function hall renting during the winter months. Many of the people that she's talked to and their mentors have said the function hall renting during the winter months is a difficult thing from the standpoint of maintaining the access and whatnot. She'll still be running the meditation and other classes and other things and the contra dancing, so she'll be plowing the area. And she's looking at, instead of weddings, the functions could possibly rent on Saturdays as well as some Friday evenings. It's not looking for this massive noise this massive disruption to the neighborhood that the neighborhood's worried about. I want to talk a little bit about that, what the neighbors are worried about. The neighbors sit up here on the road 15 feet above the average grade that the parking would be at and that this outside yard would be at. And then it's another 4 to 6 feet down to the backyard of the house. There is a 80-foot to 100-foot in places swath of existing wooded vegetation, which you can see on the screen there, which exists across the way here. And that will be enhanced along the yard edge. When you take out the invasives, you're going to have some opening along that yard edge. And for those of you that have ever cleared a wooded area, you know that as soon as you clear that wooded area, you kind of have that twig approach. And that twig approach is going to be planted in front of, but if you don't plant in front of it, you get a lot of understory that happens right at that edge and builds up a wall there. We're going to be enhancing that by planting this whole area up in front of that edge, and then planting throughout the yard, enhancing the garden, enhancing the existing gardens that exist on the property. All these things are being proposed on here. We're hoping, we've asked to talk with the neighborhood, but they said that they weren't available to speak with us. So we've come forward with what we think are some real substantial changes to the proposal to reduce the size. So I want to kind of briefly go through those. The limit on a wedding to 100 seats. The limit to any outdoor music at all to 8 o'clock in the evening. That would be acoustic outdoor music. If you had an afternoon wedding that was outdoors and you wanted to have social hour, have hors d'oeuvres on some tables, whatnot, we're picturing a harp and guitar on the deck, that type of thing happening. The uses that have been presented and that I'm going to hand out to you in just a moment, we wish to limit it that there's a condition that there's one function at a time on the one rental function at a time on the premises. This is not something that's intended to be more. Gia plans to be on the premises at all times when activities are going on. She doesn't want to be there till way late in the night. She doesn't want to be there all the time. She has children that she's got to work out with and be with, and so many of these activities are activities that her kids would be at. The contra dances, the teaching, the open mic. They don't happen every week. They don't happen all the time. We are accessible and open to conditions that would control those things. There's been discussions come up a lot about noise. The Littleton zoning bylaw, unlike many of the communities around here, has section 17380, and it could be called anything else in another one, but most towns don't even have it, that actually sets decibel levels for various different districts. An industrial A district has 1 decibel level, a residential district, which is across the road here, but the boundary, when you go, as you well know, go from an intense use to a less intense use, forms right at that property line. So right at that property line, right here at the edge of Beaverbrook Road, right here at the edge of Old Great Road, is considered residential. And the residential decibel level is lower than the industrial decibel level, as you would guess. We intend to meet and be well below those levels of noise at those areas and suggest a condition from this board that we meet those. And if we don't meet those, then we have to modify the insulation in the building or turn things down or whatever we need to do to meet those suggested levels that the bylaw has within it. Parking, I talked about before. The parking is within the bylaw. If you have a meditation center or a wellness function and you have 25 or 30 people come, they're probably coming as individuals, and that's why we want 30 spaces on the site. If you have a function coming after work, and we've limited the numbers on that to 50 to 70 people, and 50 in the fall through the winter, those people are probably going to commute with one another, and if they're not, we're going to have, they're going to have to, that's going to have to be part of the rental agreement with them, that there's X amount of parking on the facility, and that's what they have available to them for parking. There's no parking, we're told, by the neighborhood on Beaverbrook Road. Haven't found any no parking signs. We have a house condition that says there shall be no parking on Beaverbrook Road. We have this set up so that we meet the zoning for the parking totally based upon the new numbers that we have proposed for you here. The other thing that I want to show you here this evening is in the architectural plans that have been submitted to you, it showed a larger number of seats, showing that the seats work for the larger functions inside the space. And it showed the craft space upstairs. The elevations I'll come back to. The modification of the plans tonight is showing the seating that all 100 people can seat within the facility for a sit-down function, that the meditation space, the entry space is all here, and the deck. And upstairs it shows the proposed crafting area, bridal changing rooms, a groom room downstairs. She's trying to keep with the character of this historic property from the exterior as well as the interior. This addition will be exposed beams, much like the barn that's there that's falling down, but with exposed beams inside. The kind of place that Littleton's going to be proud of, the neighbors across the road will be proud of, the industrial district will be proud of, and a place that we feel that folks will come back to. The elevations here show the appearance from Great Road as being the same as what it is. This piece right here sticks out further, and this roof line currently comes back on an angle, but this is still with a residential character, even though it's in a commercial district. But it's a transition zone between what we know as the Beaverbrook Overlay District, the industrial district, to the residential district. And we feel that it works well. This is the view from, as you come up Great Road, you can see this. This is facing to the east more. This is the existing farmer's porch, the basement area underneath, and the second level. Currently, it's a shed roof over the garage, and as I said, we're changing that area so that it'll have a hip on the end, and this will have, it'll be a one-story space. There'll be windows on, right here, one-story space on that. This is from the Beaverbrook side looking down. This is what you see existing. There'll be some more windows and activity doors in here and windows here. From this space here, where the activity would occur internally, there are no doors towards Beaverbrook Road. The only doors towards Beaverbrook Road are the doors in the entry area that come into the foyer and the meditation hall and space. The activity over here has no doors in this direction towards Beaverbrook Road. This building is not now, will be fully insulated, fully AC and heated, so that you don't have to have the open doors that so many contra halls and old churches and grain halls have. And you hear people laughing and having fun outside more than you can hear the music outside. But we're willing to have it. We've got it AC. We're going to meet our sound levels at the property line. The last thing that we're proposing in this modification to you this evening is that we wish to propose that this function use that we're asking for a special permit for have a limited special permit from this board to allow for a period of time. She wouldn't start and have actual functions here until next spring, because it's going to take time to get all the building done. But from the time that the door opens, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever we kind of come up with for a discussion, as for a time frame before we need to come back before this board to review and get comments from the neighborhood, and comments from yourselves, and comments from the folks that attend to see what happens with this special permit. Should this special permit be extended in perpetuity for the property to run with it? As we know, when we, before this board, a variance and special permit run with the land and not necessarily with the applicant. So we want to make certain that we have controls upon it, that this board, this community, the residential neighbors can live with, that it's not intended to be a hellion place. It's not intended to be a place where dances or things get out and it's a big alcohol serving place. We're amendable to limitations on the back end of a wedding. You know, we're open for discussion on that. We tried to have some discussions. We could not get the representative from the neighborhood to get together with us. So hopefully we'll have those discussions this evening. With that, I'd like to pass out. I have copies for the audience as well as for you folks.
Bruce, with your permission, I am going to ask that this hearing be stepped down for maybe 20 minutes. I have a scheduled 7:50, and I have town council who came all the way from the inner city, from Watertown, to be here. And since he's on the town's dime, and this discussion, I told you I didn't want to cut it short. I'd like to get this other hearing in and out, and then we'll come back to you.
No problem.
So thank you for the presentation, and I'll let you give a quick summary when we pick up again. So everyone in the group assembled here, I just want a show of hands, how many are here for this application, 547 Great Road? And
You ought to take them,
is
because
there anybody here from the other one, which is, help me out, the little...
Kimball Farm Village on the
Kimball
Common.
Farm Village on the Common. Okay, so it is just Town Council, Kimball Farm Council. So I would say if you want to get up and stretch, 15, 20 minutes, and we'll be back again. I'm going to open the hearing on 7:50 PM, discussion on case number 695A, which is Kimball Farm Village on the Common LLC, a request to extend a comprehensive permit. And having opened the hearing, I need to announce that I need to step down and recuse myself because I have a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Anyone else?
I do not have a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, but I do have a relationship with Mr. Kimball, so I'm recusing myself.
So that leaves as our regular members of the board, Mr. John Cantino, Ms. Cheryl Hollinger. And I believe that John has seniority, but I believe that Ms. Hollinger has prepped herself to take over the chairmanship, and Mr. Cantino has requested that he not be asked to do it. So I'm going to designate Cheryl as the chair for this hearing, and then I need to step out of the room. Please tell me when you're done.
Need to appoint us, I guess.
I guess the chair
No,
needs
I
to
don't
appoint.
need to do that. We can't do anything till she leaves.
Excuse me. They're gonna see.
You all right with this?
Yes,
You're-
yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
Then I'm going to open the hearing, it being 8:10 at night. This hearing was scheduled for 7:50. I'd like to open the hearing in front of us. That's... Oh, sorry, the discussion on Kimball Farms Village on the Common, request to extend the comprehensive permit. Mr. Ansel, I think you're here to...
I am, and with me this evening is Mr. Mike Kimball as well. We are here once again requesting an extension of the permits that for this project. I know that there...
Sorry, excuse me 1 minute. I need to appoint everyone that's left here to be on this committee. We need all of you. So I'm appointing Mark and Patrick and Rod to join us, and I apologize, Mr. Ansel.
Okay, the members of the board, with the exception of Mr. Joyce, have had a long history with this project and are well aware of this. I know that there have been some developments relative to Roland Bernier writing a letter yesterday relative to the effect of the permits. I don't know if you
We
received
have a copy of it, and I will read it into record.
Okay, I would request that you do that.
I will, I promise.
Okay, and so we're seeking a request. I can provide some background as to why we are seeking that request, what has gone on during the period of ownership from the Kimball family and where we're at. I don't know what town council's position is. I do know what the building commissioner's position is, which was that the permits are valid, and that their request was if town council has a differing opinion, then that they should issue that. So I guess I'm trying to save the board's time, but I'm willing to provide a full explanation as to where we are, because I don't know if the hearing is going to go in a way that town council has a differing view than the building commissioners, or where we stand with that.
You're requesting an extension, and
Re-
and you're
extension.
offering to go give us all the background necessary, but I think all of us are familiar with it, and you'd prefer to not go into it if we don't need you to.
Yes, but I'm certainly willing to do that. I'm willing to bring you up to speed as to what's happened during the past year.
Why don't you fill us in on what's happened during the past year?
Okay, I will. When Mr. Kimball acquired this property,
No, just the last 12 months.
Yes, and it is relevant to that. One of the main key factors in acquiring this property was the wastewater treatment plant. And that wastewater treatment plant, our opinion is that the permits for the wastewater treatment plant are still valid, and that there was some interest in using that with his existing operation through Kimball Farms. Also, during the past 12 months, my client zealously looked into building a water park. And water park would be a joint Littleton-Westford project, put a considerable amount of effort into that, and determined that that was going to be a non-starter for a number of different reasons. It was a dream of his to build a water park. It didn't come together. So we have now, and there has been efforts with the Kimball family to look into doing something with the Fletcher family, which owns the adjacent parcel, and there was also discussions with the abutter, Mr. Moran, relative to selling a portion of those properties. So really the last 12 months have been, can we build a water park? What are our development options? Where do we stand with doing a joint project with the Fletchers? Can we do something with the Moran project? And all of those have been turned down. So we're now looking back to saying that what is the best use for this property, and we're looking at preserving our rights under the 40B project, which is probably the direction that the project is going to go. Although they are still interested in having discussions, and as recently as the last 2 weeks, Mr. Kimball has met with the town administrator here in Littleton and building inspector, and looked into some other possibilities for the property. But the cornerstone of continuing to explore all possibilities is making sure that we have the permits. The building commissioner's position is that we have valid permits, at least for what we have applied for. By way of background relative to the building inspector's position is that originally, obviously, nothing would have gotten built without the issuance of building permits at one point. Those were revoked because they hadn't been used, and they've now been resubmitted. And he said that he would be obligated to issue the permit subject to the completion of the wastewater treatment plant. So that's our last 12 months. Our position is that we need to show, or legally we need to show good cause shown for why we need the extensions. We've tried absolutely everything under our power to look into different options for this land, and it keeps coming back to that housing is our best alternative, and we have an existing project. There is a considerable amount of infrastructure that has been put together through the prior development team, and we've also, if the board's painfully aware, we're recovering from our worst housing slump in years. Things are certainly picking up in the residential real estate world, and as is evident by the 40B project that's on the Littleton-Acton line, they've had a tremendous amount of activity there, and I think that things have sprung to life, and this project is certainly viable now as a housing development. I think that when Mr. Kimball purchased the property through foreclosure, it probably wasn't viable at that time. So that's our last 12 months. When we were before you last year, the board granted an extension for, after considerable discussion, on a 4-to-1 vote. And we recorded that extension, and so where we sit now is we have a total of 10 units that are three-quarters partially constructed or are in different stages. Those units would not, could not be occupied until such time as they had a septic system, and personally, I don't know what we would end up doing if we had those permits revoked and we had to go through a 48 process, because we don't have a road. It's a condominium anticipated development, so there's certainly some uncertainty as to where those units would be, and if the building inspector's position is correct and supported by town council, then that we have valid units. We have also had discussions with Ed Marchand, who's Town of Littleton's 40B consultant, and it was his opinion that we have validly exercised our rights under the permit for the commencement of construction. So that's in a 2-minute, without trying to go through the history of everything since 2006, which is when the board originally issued the permit, as to where we are now.
Now, I'm going to ask Chris, this is the first time I've chaired a meeting. If I start to misspeak, would you please interrupt me?
Sure.
Because while I've been a member of this board for close to 8 years now, I've never chaired it before, so I'm going to, so please, if I start to misspeak, please interrupt me.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm going to open it to discussion from, questions from the board, and if no one minds, I'd like to start. Is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
I'm a little confused, Mr. Ansel. When this property was purchased, it is zoned residential, and it was purchased with an existing 40B residential permit. I'm a little confused by your discussion of all of the other possible uses when such a zoning change would not be in the purview of this board, but indeed would have to come before town meeting to make those kind of zoning changes. And if it was not your intention to build the 40B, then I'm confused by the continuance of asking for more and more extensions.
It is our intention to build the 40B now.
I'm delighted to hear that. In fact, I've been told that, and understand that you have actually pulled the permits now for 2 of the units, and that, so construction should be on its way. And I'm told as long as, please correct me if I misspeak, Chris, as long as construction is active and on its way, we don't have to worry about a permit expiring, but we need to give them an extension, and that would cover starting the active construction. Is that
So
correct?
it's my understanding, I checked with the building office this afternoon, it's my understanding that the permits haven't been issued yet, but the applications are pending. So
Applications are pending, that's close enough. Let me read into record Mr. Rowland's letter. Kimball Farms Village on the Common, 40B. The applicant is seeking to request an extension to the 40B special permit on Great Road before the permitting granting authority. This office recently received a permit application to complete construction 5A through 7A Cataldo Pond Road within the noted 40B project. Said building permit application is presently under review. Subject to receiving additional information regarding this property, this office intends to honor the existing 40B special permit by issuing a building permit with noted restrictions that no occupancy will be granted until such a time there's documented evidence that the wastewater treatment facility is finalized and fully functional, and that Littleton Water verified water to the building. This language is not unique, as it was understood with the first installment of building permits for this site. It is my belief that the applicant has fulfilled the requirement of exercising the permitted 40B special permit until such a time I am directed otherwise by legal advice from town council, or until the building permit expires. As an aside, I would comment to you, we've been asking for these permits to be pulled for the last 5-6 years, and are delighted to finally see some of these permits being pulled. It's a wonderful thing. We wish you had pulled them 5 years ago, but it's wonderful that they're being pulled now, and that this will go on and be built, and all the work that was put into designing this complex and getting it ready and making it suit the town needs and fulfilling its, will finally come to fruition. It's a wonderful thing.
To clarify what I said, because clearly I was not clear with you, is that in order to grant the extension, it's the applicant's position that we have to show good cause shown for the grant of the extension, which is in the purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals. What I was trying to say is that our good cause shown is that we aggressively explored other opportunities for this property. When my client purchased the property in 2010, the housing market, especially for 40B developments, was really in the tanks. So we aggressively looked for other alternatives. And during that period of time, not that Mr. Kimball was participating in this, that there were 3 started and failed rezoning opportunities, and if those had gone together, then that might have been an opportunity for the project. So what I was just trying to explain to you is, or to the board I should say, is that it's not as though we've purchased the property in 2010 and just paid taxes on it and have done nothing, that Mr. Kimball has aggressively pursued different options. We've just come against a whole bunch of different roadblocks and gotten back to the fact that the highest and best use for this property is utilizing the existing permits.
Sounds like we're all on the same page, correct?
That sounds reasonable to me. And I don't want to keep the applicant in suspense. I don't have an independent opinion as to whether the extension should be granted or not. I'm just here tonight to make sure the board understands the legal standard for granting an extension, that it needs to apply when it's considering the applicant's request for an extension. And the applicant's correct. They need to show good cause when they come back in for an extension. And I think that an economic downturn that causes them to need to put it on the shelf and explore other opportunities for a brief window of time is likely to satisfy the standard for good cause. I don't disagree with anything that's been said so far.
The economy's turning around.
I think it would be reasonable. You would additionally be reasonable for the board to expect the applicant to start moving much more quickly to develop the project, given that the permit's 9 years old. But given where we're at right now with building permit applications pending, I don't see. I think the applicant is likely satisfied its burden of showing you good cause for the extension that's in front of you right now.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a few.
Okay.
Okay, when does this permit expire?
And July 5th. The current extension expires July 15th, I believe.
And when do you?
July 6th, I'm sorry.
July 6th.
This is the old decision.
Okay, and when do you expect to get the building permits issued?
They're going to be approved in normal course. I haven't actually independently spoken to Roland Bernier about that. They've been applied for.
I
Because
asked
I
Chris
think- yeah.
about this question.
And that's what I'm
not
leading
just, you
toward.
can't just have the permits, you have to have active construction going in order to not need an extension.
Yeah, because my preference would be that they get going on this present extension, the present
I know.
permit, and not have to issue an extension.
But they're here last minute, and
Yeah.
they haven't even got the permits in hand yet.
Yeah, well, so they should have done it last minute.
Well, we may all feel that way,
Yeah.
but
And
but
I
nonetheless,
also- yeah.
here they are.
And just to play the devil's side, we are over our requirement now for 40B, so I don't think we have the same pressure to continue this. Secondly, it is 9 years old, and if we were to go through the process now, I wonder how different it would be.
That's what I asked Mr. Heap, and I ended up going to see Keith Bergman and asking him if I could have Chris's opinion and help with this, because it turns out that the fact that we're now over our quota is not good cause to deny an extension on an older clause, because all of the would you explain it again?
Sure. The Department of Housing and Community Development has regulations that govern all aspects of the board's review of a 40B application or an original application, and running all the way through to the grant of a permit and then to extensions should they ever need to be granted. And the regulations that govern your review of extensions specifically say that you can't deny an extension for a project that's been permitted a while ago because of additional affordable units that have been permitted since then. So the town is presently over its 10%, hit that mark 2 years ago, but that does not allow, that fact by itself should not factor into your consideration of whether to grant this extension or not.
You know, we're going to have to have some discussion. Does anyone have any more questions for Rob? Okay, then let's open it to discussion. We could make a case that our housing needs have changed in town, and indeed, there's been committees looking at housing authority committees, and all kinds of folks looking, steerage committee, and all kinds of folks in the last 10 years looking at what we need for housing in town. And we could try to fight this based on that. We could say we've identified different needs than we did 10 years ago. And we could try to deny this extension based on that. But he could kick it, it could be kicked up to, what board is it?
The Housing Appeals Committee.
Housing Appeals Committee, and it would be a battle. And it, especially with permits being pulled now and things actually moving along, it would be very much an uphill battle, is my understanding. So with permits being pulled, we can indeed ask that construction move along, and we can give a very short time of a permit, a couple months even, so that it moves along and we can see that indeed this is all good faith. It is going to be built. It is not just using an existing permit to get other concessions. So I talked to Chris and asked Chris for what would be a reasonable decision and what would be a reasonable amount of time to see that he gets going on this construction. This goes back to your questions, Rod. And Chris suggested 6 months as a reasonable amount of time to actually get going with construction, get permits going, move this complex along. Does that answer everyone's questions on that?
Yes.
Now, how do I do this? Do I close the hearing? What?
It's not a hearing. It's
Oh,
a meeting,
this-
so you can, there's nothing.
I don't have to close anything.
At some point, you will want to, to ask the board to vote. I don't know if the applicant has any additional comments on what's just been said. I would just sort of expand on one of your comments, which was that, like all things you do with respect to 40B, your decision on whether to grant the extension or not is appealable up to the Housing Appeals Committee.
Yeah.
And I would expect, the applicant hasn't said this, but I would expect that where the board would bear the burden of proof, and it would, as you know, the HACS tends to be reasonably disposed towards the applicant's position. So I just wanted to flag that, as with all things you do on a comprehensive permit, this decision is one that can be appealed directly up to HAC. And if you have any questions about how that would go, or how HAC would review it, I'm happy to answer them, but I just wanted to note that for you as well.
Now, I know we said in our last meeting that we weren't going to grant an extension, but I think there's some good faith being shown here, and I think that it makes sense to do so. What do you think, John?
Well, I actually probably was the only one that wanted to go 2 years on the last extension, because I felt this was going to happen. Now, what does Mr. Ansel, what is your request for the extension, for how long? If you haven't gave us a date.
We would request a year. I think that but I understand that where I sit before the board. When we first came before you on this project, the board's directive was, and I'm 1,000,000% paraphrasing, we don't like this project, we would like you to explore other alternatives. That's what our directive was. We didn't like this project, we felt like we got jammed up with this project, we didn't like the approval process of this, so we went back and tried to see what we could do with the project. At least that's the feeling that
I don't remember saying that at all. I'm sorry. Once we permitted a project, we've permitted a project.
I understand that the process, I was told you weren't happy about it, not you just individually, but that was the director from the board. So we were asked to go look at other alternatives. So that's what our good cause shown is. We've really exhausted those views, and now, you know, if you give us a year would be ideal, and that you can, and we will resolve where we are going 1,000,000% within a year. I know that we will be able to do that. If what you're going to say is that we have a 6-month period of time, I think that we're not going to shape the project the way that we want to, but that's what it is. I mean, we would certainly prefer a year. I know that we are going to show progress. It's a very viable project now, and I have a very good handle of where the market is, or at least I think it is, I do, and there have been a number of projects in this area that have really done well within the last year and a half. Granville Woods in Westford, which is 164 units, sold in a 2-year period of time. Great volume. I represented the developer in that project. In the Great Road project, had half of them under agreement before they broke ground. So I know that the demand for housing in a high-quality town like my hometown is certainly very strong. And so I know it's a viable project. It wasn't 2 years ago. Or at least I didn't think that it was, and that was our good cause. That's our good cause shown. A year would be absolutely ideal. I think that what you could say is that we'll grant a year extension, but in 6 months, we want to make sure that there is some work done on at least the 2 building permits that have been pulled. And I think that might be some kind of a compromise where he said that, look, you need to complete the construction of the 2 permits that you pulled prior to this meeting, and that you have to have substantial construction started within the calendar year.
Mark, do you have anything you want to?
No, I mean, I kind of like the approach he's taking. You know, I'm taking them at their word that, yeah, they're planning to go through with the 40B, and that this isn't just a delaying tactic to explore other options. Just to guarantee that would happen if we gave them the 6 months.
That would keep.
That would satisfy me that, yeah, they're sincere, that, yeah, they're going forward with this, and they're not still looking at other options.
The original
Patrick,
decision.
I'm sorry, I'm pulling the board now.
Sorry.
Patrick?
I think it's a 6-month extension on the request.
Rod?
As long as construction starts, that initiates the special permit, then I would opt for the 6 months. But ironically, if they were still exploring other options, I'd give them more time to continue to explore other options.
Shh, you're not supposed to say that up front, I don't think.
Okay, so basically you want to hear back from them in 6 months in any case.
Yeah.
If they are doing construction, though, and actively, and have permits going, they don't need to come back from us because they won't need an extension. Is that correct?
In order to avoid the permit falling away, they need to commence construction. So once they do that, I think that they...
So we just need to give an extension a reasonable extension to commence construction.
That's right.
And you would say a year,
A year with a 6-month review.
with a 6-month review. I think 6 months is plenty personally. Would someone like to, shall I read what I asked Mr. Heap to
Sure.
draft for us? Certificate of vote. He wrote, at the meeting on June 18th, what?
There's a little mouse underneath your feet.
Headed to Shelley now.
Oh, God. Fortunately, I don't mind mice.
We're in the country, mice happen.
Yes.
And the town does not have a cat.
We not really an official town.
It's afraid of John.
When Bring your chair, Kelly?
This week is testing me. I had to drive over a huge bridge to get to my son's college at Neville Mouse.
Okay, at the meeting on June 18th, 2015, the zoning board of appeals voted, and then there's room for us to decide how we're voting, to extend the comprehensive permit granted to the Village on the Common and subsequently transferred to Kimball Farms Village on the Common, LLC, the property at Great Road, Littleton, Mass. Said comprehensive permit is dated July 26, 2006, and recorded in the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds, Book 480030, page 380, and then we got to put in the 6 months. This extension will expire on. And then, in addition, the Zoning Board of Appeals noted that it granted this comprehensive permit on July 26, 2006, and that it had previously granted 2 extensions. One 3-year extension was voted on May 19, 2011, and one 1-year extension was voted on May 22, 2014. To date, there has not been meaningful progress on this development, and the Zoning Board of Appeals indicated that the absence of actual construction on site, it might reasonably deny a request for further extensions of this 9-year-old permit. In the C, and then he quoted 70 CMR 56.05, and I'm going to give this to you, Shelley. Accordingly, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted its strong recommendation that the permit holder take the steps necessary to move this development forward prior to the expiration of this new extension period. Is everyone okay with that?
That's quite a motion.
Now, do we have to vote formally, or do?
Well, that's just the draft that I prepared, sort of on my own, given what I thought was the,
So I would fill in 6 months here, and the bottom line, Rod, John, if they come back, if in 6 months they need another extension, they're going to be back.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I'm hoping that they won't be back, that there'll be meaningful progress, and we'll be done, and it will be all Roland's purview and the other town boards' purview, and that it will continue. So would you be all right with that?
Well, the thing is, this is what I felt was going to happen last year, so here we are again with another meeting.
I know, but because of it, we got the permits
I know.
pulled.
Well,
Otherwise, the permits probably wouldn't be pulled.
yeah, I hear you.
The 1-year period will unequivocally allow us to do what we want to do. My problem with hearing 6 months is that what does meaningful progress mean? And if meaningful progress means that we are going to be issued a building permit, then we've satisfied that goal. And I know that what happened previously to the permits that were issued for this parcel were that Roland determined that he revoked a permit because work hadn't been done in a calendar year. And I don't know if that's part of the building code, that work wasn't done in a year, so therefore he had statutory right to revoke the permit. I think that if the issuance of the permit, which is in normal case, there's a whole bunch of cases about what constitutes substantial completion or starting of a project, and if that is issuing the building permit, then we're fine with that. If you're going to ask us to clarify that we need to show substantial completion within a 6-month period and that we're going to be working on that, our goal would be to market the property and find a suitable buyer, and a 6-month period of time might be too short.
I don't think what this does is require substantial completion of the project. I think what this does instead is, in backing up a step, I think a building permit is an indicator that the applicant is taking some steps to move forward with the project that it's had permitted for some time. But I don't think the issuance of a building permit is by itself sufficient to ensure that the permit will survive forever. Rather, the applicant needs to pull a building permit and begin construction of the actual project that you've permitted a while ago. So I think what the motion I drafted is intended to do is say, in order to make the permit survive forever, they need to begin construction or take some steps to move the project forward. If they make the calculation that the project needs some minor tweak or something, some small revision in order to move forward. Let's get that process moving forward too, because this permit's been hanging out there for a great long time, and I'm here to encourage you to grant the extension, but to the extent you want to express to the applicant that you want this project to move forward sooner rather than later, I think you can do that too. But again, in order to make the permit not lapse, they need to begin construction. So that's the only real benchmark you can hold them to. If they don't want to begin construction of the project that's actually permitted, and they need to do something different, and I think you might want to encourage them to do that.
But I would have given them 3 months. I've been talked into the 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can someone make a motion for us? All these folks are back and they'd like to get on with their case, I'm sure.
Now, what are we agreeing on, though? I can make the motion, but you're looking for, the rest of the board only wants 6 months?
I think the rest of the board is saying 6 months, is what I'm hearing.
Is that what
In,
everybody?
in, and if you
We have,
ask,
we'll vote on it, but
okay, well,
I was looking for 1 year. My motion would be 1 year with a 6-month review to see where we're at, with permits being issued and moving forward.
So then just make it a 6 month. If they have to come back and ask for another 6 months, that's the same as a review.
All right.
but I would like the record to reflect that our last, that you're not going to be 100% opposed to looking at an extension within that 6-month period of time.
Mr. Ansel, obviously, we changed our minds at our last meeting on this. We told you very firmly we would not grant another extension. So here we are granting an extension. Whatever happens, if you come back 6 months and you've done absolute nothing, I cannot guarantee you we're going to give you another 6 months. I don't know what the board will feel that way. I think the board is I think I can speak for the board that we're pleased to see some action and something happen here, and delighted that things are starting to move along. And giving you 6 months to make some substantial, as Chris defined it, movement towards completing this process
I guess
is certainly...
That's my concern, is I don't know what that means. So,
Mr. Heap just defined it again. He said if you needed modification, then come back and get modification. If you start significant construction, then you don't even need us to give you another extension. You're automatically extended.
Okay.
All you have to be is be in some kind of significant construction. Pulling a permit, he says, isn't enough.
I
Doing
guess-
actual construction and doing work. I drove through that site today. Nothing's happened to it. It looks the same as it has in the last 5 years. And except that now the road connects all the way to Kimball's. And I came that way. I came down through the school buses. And it just hasn't changed. And it's time, and it's attractive nuisance. There have been fires there. There have been teenagers there. There have been problems there. It's time for this project to move along. So I would ask for a motion for the 6 months. I don't think I'm allowed to make it.
No.
Okay.
I'll move that motion with 6 months plugged in.
Move to close?
Oh, move to close?
Well, this wasn't a hearing, it was just a discussion.
Okay, so I'm not closing it.
All right.
Thank you. All right, so you would,
Move that with the motion with 6 months.
all those in favor?
Well, you have to have a second.
Oh, okay, someone,
I'll second it.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? I say aye, too, so there is no opposed. All right, did I do that right?
Did it great.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for your patience, Mr. Ansel. And Chris, thank you very much for your time and coming out.
See you.
And
Took that mouse
thank
with you?
you to the audience for your patience and letting us get through this. As townspeople, our town council does cost us, and we want to move things along. Thank you.
One way to disrupt the,
Catch it, but
one way to disrupt the meeting.
I didn't want to violate my flow. So just in case-
Watch where you step, Sherry.
Yeah. What's the matter? The mouse?
She's angsting about the mouse.
Well, I'm just going to get something to put over
Someone
it.
comes back, my bag, and
If it comes back, we're going to throw that on.
All right.
Okay, keep your eye out.
Yep.
So I apologize, I was very optimistic on how short it would be, and that's my fault, I'm sorry. Bruce, when we left off, you were going to pass out the modification requests, and I think your presentation was nearing an end. So if I may, let the board ask some questions of you?
Certainly, I
Is- is
passed
there a
out the application with the reduced copies of the changes of the architectural and 3 large copies, and I gave the abutters a series of the letter and the revised uses.
Did I end up with one in front of me?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
You got it?
This-
That, correct.
Thank you. Okay.
And there should be a plan.
Oh, I forgot about
The questions if you're ready.
Is, can anyone see whether Jeff is still in the hall? Jeff? We're done. Okay, let me go all the way here. John, do you have questions?
No.
Okay, Cheryl, go.
I've got a small list. Let's start with uses, and your industrial A zone there, correct?
That is correct.
So restaurants are allowed, if I'm reading this correctly.
That is correct.
Restaurants are allowed wholesaling, warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, open storage, bulk storage.
Just do the ones that apply, please.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's all kinds of things allowed here.
This is motel, hotel, and conference center. It was
But with a
carried on-
permit.
Yeah, carried on the next page.
With a permit.
So actually, excuse me 1 minute for interrupting you, but I do want to say something procedurally to the board. And to the people here, this is before us on a special permit. The special permit is provided for in the zoning bylaw when the use regulation schedule requires that you can do a certain use with the grant of a special permit. The special permit in this case is acted on by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Some special permits are acted on by the Planning Board, some are acted on by the Zoning Board of Appeals. This is not a variance, this is not a use variance. The standards for a special permit are less strict than that for variance. The question here, or the thing I want to remind everyone, including my board members, is the applicant has to get a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals to conduct any of the requested uses within the industrial A zone, but the special permit in and of itself won't let them open the doors. After the special permit is granted, they still have to get Board of Health approval for the septic, as Bruce has pointed out. That's not our domain. That has nothing to do with this board, and we don't have any right to condition our permit on Board of Health approval. We don't have to, because he can't open without it. He also has to get site plan review by the planning board, and the planning board has to consider and agree that there's enough parking for the use, that he's within the zoning bylaw requirements for traffic, drainage, stormwater, everything going into the nitrogen load. That's not our purview either. Our job here is just to determine whether we can give a special permit for the use based on the 4 corners of the document that says the certain uses are allowed in the industrial A zone, and that would be on a vote of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So having said that, that was just procedurally. We're going to go through board questions first. Please hold your question. Okay, go ahead.
So my understanding is a restaurant is allowed, and he does not need a special permit for a restaurant under Y4.
Yes.
Okay, I want to understand that. Composting toilets, why?
Cheryl, I don't want to focus on that because it's not ours.
All right.
Thank you.
It's the septic system, but they smell.
But that's not ours. That's the Board of Health.
Okay. The other, are you aware the Unitarian Church does contra dance twice a month here in Littleton,
And I believe my client is aware of that.
and called Sacred Circle? And it sounds good. I mean, I guess this isn't as much a question as I'm delighted that this building isn't being torn down and a manufacturing plant isn't being put there, or a stone yard that would make a whole lot more noise, or all the other possible things that Industrial A would allow that space to be. I'm delighted that your owner wants to maintain the building and use it in such a gentle fashion, whereas it could go down and it'd be a power plant or something else very easily. It sounds to me like what you're doing is very much along the lines of what a church does. And I understand you are limiting it to 100, which I understand is then brings it within the sprinkler system. You touched on the sprinkler system.
I did not touch on the sprinkler system. That would be within the architectural of the building. We still have to, that would be another permit portion that we still have to deal with. That's part of, before the planning board. We've had discussions about putting sprinklers in the building. We probably will be putting sprinklers in the building. But that's another step altogether. And we didn't bring it below 100 to get out of a sprinkler guideline. We brought it below 100 to try to 100 and below to try to address concerns from the neighborhood and at the same time allow for the wedding use to occur. If you go much below 100, we think we'll be taking, she believes she'll be taking herself out of the market as a wedding facility.
Have you looked into, I noticed you, there's not, currently there is not, I drove all around the site. I drove into the neighbor's little loop there and drove around. I went up and down the road. I drove into the driveway of the site and looked at it. Currently, there is no driveway coming off of Beaver Brook Road. Have you looked into, which I could...
Excuse me if I may, there actually is. It may not be passable because there's a tree down right here, but this drive is here. This is existing.
That is existing.
That is existing. I wish to enhance it. It was used, they had dumpsters and tractor-trailer trucks back here. Previous owner did.
Ah, I see. Did you explore the options at all of not using that driveway, of extending, coming the parking through the existing front driveway, and thus keeping the traffic off of that part of Beaver Brook?
We did explore that, but it takes away from all the space immediately around the house that we want to try to keep in that rural atmosphere. We're trying to keep them separate, which is why we've kind of separated the parking into different areas now, so that it's not congregated in one location, so that it is in different locations and set up there. We've looked at the traffic counts. I can get into the traffic. We're less than 0.5% of traffic if you count to and fro, with 150 cars coming. But if you look at just 13 parking spaces out here on the Beaver Brook Road coming into there, you're less than 0.25% of the daily traffic flow on that road. Less than 0.25%.
How many parking spaces does your immediate neighbor have?
Which immediate neighbor we have?
The one
Up here?
Rod, can you put this back on again?
I'm going to guess in the neighborhood of 30, but I have not counted, and I have not gone around the property.
Okay. Oops.
But we should be able to count them. Let's see.
Quite a few.
It looks like in excess of 30.
It's a little over 30.
And then
I
below
count
there's
over
one
15
more.
on the top, and there's more on the bottom.
Oh, I see, kind of, sort of the, you can't tell from the road. Would you be maintaining that tree line exactly as it is? What I'm talking about right here.
Yes, that as well as the one, if you...
You talked about modifying right in here,
Yes.
but are you planning to do anything with, say, the first 10 feet in there?
We would be supplementing that with low growing in front of it and new trees. And if you look right there,
It's fairly dense
if you can point for
vegetation.
me, Cheryl, right under the O and the G in Google,
Yep.
you can see the driveway. Come over to the second O and
Oh, right
G, I'm
here?
sorry. You can see
Yeah.
there's the driveway coming in right there. And that hedgerow of trees between our property and the abutting property, the abutting commercial property, would maintain, whoops, low battery.
Yeah, it's going to go on it pretty
There you go.
soon.
And then
20%.
they'll be also maintaining the trees on the left side of that driveway as well before the gravel, because that's an existing kind of riprap retaining wall area that we show here, and those trees would be maintained in there as well.
I noticed that this neighbor has a nice dense tree line there, so that this parking lot really isn't visible from Beaver Brook.
And ours
I seem
is
to be-
2 to 3
The
times
most-
the depth of that.
The most invasive thing I saw about the next door neighbor was the fact that they obviously don't allow smoking on the property, because there were 4 people standing at the end of their driveway smoking, which seemed a little odd. But there we go, that's my questions, thank you. Rod?
I think this list that they prepared, it
It's
just about
amazing.
takes care of it, yeah. Put that in the motion.
How about,
I don't think we have any questions.
we're a long way from a motion, right? Patrick, any
His-
questions?
His phone's going
How about-
dead, we can't be too
Mark, how
long.
about you?
Considering all the other uses that are allowed in that area. I think this is, probably has a lot less impact than any of those. The only thing I would say about unamplified music is, have you ever been to a drum circle?
Yes, I
It
have,
actually-
and I
Does it-
will point out that House Guideline number 16, the second to the bottom of the page, says no drumming
didn't read
circles
all the way
allowed
down.
in the house or on the grounds.
Yeah, I saw
And you thought of everything, and I didn't read
Well,
everything.
I haven't, but the applicant
Yeah.
has. The applicant has made statements of the mindfulness, the peacefulness, the tranquility. She doesn't want to have this as a place where it's an hour, you come as a therapeutic session. She wants to have it as you're here for a relaxation and meditation and other things that are associated with that.
You're fine? I just have a few, Bruce. Is this property on the historic register?
No, it's not.
Is it in the meaningful historic buildings guideline that Roland keeps in his office that isn't the
Yeah, I'm
historic
not sure.
register? Would you do me a favor and look at that, because the Long Store was not on the historic register, and we had, as you know, a tremendous amount of controversy in this town about taking that down and reassembling it, et
And it
cetera.
was torn down.
So I would like you to just look at that, please.
Meaningful list,
Roland has 2 books in his office, and he can find them real fast.
no problem.
I meant to do that before the meeting and didn't. You said parking was 30 spaces now, and that's wholly contained within the site.
That's correct.
What is the story with the old abandoned Great Road? And I see that, I also drove and see that it goes nowhere to anything beyond this property except like a dead end. Is that,
It is part of the state layout of Great Road.
yeah,
It is a section of road to a dead end. The bollards are shown. The dead end is right here in the sign. It is a wide section of asphalt. It is maintained currently for snow plowing. I spoke with the police department, and they said that as long as the street is not posted with no parking signs, you're allowed to park on it. We are not proposing to park on it. We're proposing to park within the guidelines of what we have. We're going to put out to applicants that, people that wish to use the space, this is the parking that we have. You cannot park on Beaverbrook Road. The owner will be there to police it as well. And if there is need for overflow parking, I'm sure that Old Great Road will get a car or two, but it's not the intention.
But you would keep the parking off of Beaverbrook no matter
100%
what?
correct. One of the lists in the House guidelines.
Yeah.
okay, I have other questions, but I'm going to hold them and come back to them, and I'm going to read into the record the building inspector, zoning enforcement officer's comments, 547 Great Road. The applicant seeks a special permit to allow function rentals, weddings, dance classes, outside functions, etc., at a site zoned industrial A. The property has an existing single-family dwelling and attached barn. Building department files reflect minimal interior alterations to a single-family dwelling. This office was unable to classify the proposed multi-use as a permitted principal use in the use regulations schedule 17326. However, the proposed use was similar to some recreational uses as identified by the Littleton zoning bylaw, and as such, I encourage the applicant to seek a special permit for, quote, other principal uses. Otherwise, a building permit could not be issued for the proposed change of use. No further comment. That was the building inspector's comment. I also am seeing a chain of emails from Scott Wojcinski, who's fire chief in this town. It's just quick email. Definitely does not look like enough parking, and they will need to add sprinklers for the place of assembly if over 100. That, I think, was in response to the earlier proposal before you reduced the number to 100, I think. Okay. I have a comment from Matt King, Chief of Police, Town of Littleton. I see some parking, but I do not believe it will be enough for the conference wedding center, so I am concerned about that. If they can work out parking, I'm all for this type of facility. Chief of Police, Littleton. That was Tuesday, June 9th. Again, I think that was with the earlier proposal that had a larger number. Then I see Amy Green. Is that Board of Health?
No, it's
I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say. Amy Green is our new conservation admin. I apologize, Amy. This one says, based on Mass GIS, there don't appear to be any wetland issues, but the area is mapped by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. So if you have to go there, you have to go there.
And I brought this up at the planning board meeting, the entire area, both the residential and the commercial is mapped under the Natural Heritage Program, and a MISA filing would have to occur.
Okay. And then from Keith Dunn, who is Fire Safety Enforcement Officer over at the Fire Department, Shelley and Marin. The new access road is required to be 20-foot wide per NFPA 118.2, new since January 1st. I have spoken with Bruce from GPR, and he's going to submit a revision showing all weather shoulders to proposed pavement that will meet this requirement, otherwise no issues.
We've reviewed it. We have, the drive right now is proposed at 16 feet, narrows to 12, and then back to 16. Part of that was to try to minimize its appearance from the road. Keith has agreed to have it 16 feet wide the whole way with 2-foot gravel shoulders on either side.
James Gariffi from the Neshoba Associated Board of Health. 547 Great Road. This office would need to review the plans and issue a permit for the use of composting toilets for the site. Based on the plans presented, no food preparation can occur on site, catering only, and 3, a variance to the Littleton Board of Health regulations would be needed. And finally, Marin Toohill. This was Monday. When was your meeting with Planning Board? Last Thursday. Last Thursday, so this is since that meeting. From Marin Toohill. Thanks, Shelley, for sending this information. The Planning Board continued their public hearing on this project to their meeting of Thursday, July 9th. There were quite a few neighbors at the PB hearing. Concerns regarding traffic and noise were raised by the neighbors. And just as background, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you, I was at that Planning Board meeting. I had the pleasure of meeting a couple of you at a house party subsequent, and I heard all of your concerns. I am kind of gratified that at least the applicant and the engineer listened to those concerns and made some of these changes. So let's see where we go tonight based on what's been presented. I'll ask you to raise your hand. I'll recognize you, identify yourself for the record, and then speak, okay? Yes.
My name is Steve Reedy. I live at 4 Beaverbrook Road. I prepared things to try and just keep myself on topic and move along, but I just wanted to say a couple of quick points. One is, house rules are not binding, so we appreciate that there's this and that, but it doesn't really, it's not bound, but it doesn't bind her and it doesn't bind any subsequent buyer. Also, we agree, I agree, it's a beautiful home. I think it's wonderful. I'm glad it didn't get torn down. Certainly I'm supportive of enrichment programs for special needs children, but that's really not what I'm here to oppose. So I would just like to kind of point those out. As a neighborhood group, we worked with the planning board during the overlay district meetings. That was a few years ago before the point went in. We did that specifically to ensure types of uses like this didn't go in, and we had specifically this property in mind. We then appeared as one voting block in support of the overlay district at town meeting. It was a good compromise, and we'd like to see the intent of it upheld. Originally, the overlay district came all the way to Beaverbrook Road, so all of the uses that are discussed here would have been allowed, and more. So specifically, the ZBA, as I understand it, is tasked with evaluating this special permit request, and I'm just going to talk about 4 of the criteria with a couple of points on each that you are going to consider. One is nuisance. So, and the first nuisance I have to bring up is noise. Article 17 does restrict the noise in industrial district to 65 decibels at night, during the day, 50 at night. I don't know what the residential is because that was a little bit of a change here, presumably lower. A typical wedding band, I researched, 80 to 90 decibels, a loud orchestra at 90 to 100 decibels. Again, the house rules, acoustic doesn't mean anything because house rules can change. Even if the buildings are soundproof, windows and doors are open. We've all been to weddings. I'm a hot guy. I spend a lot of my time outdoors so that I can cool down, and the chatter that goes with that. But the doors are open and the music comes out. And they also wanted to do outdoor events, which that's not even indoors. Music and crowd noise will create a significant disturbance to our peace. And the ability of, we have 3 small children. They go to bed at 8 o'clock. So
Which house are you?
4 Beaverbrook Road. We're directly across from, the driveway he's talking about was
This one right here?
cut in.
This,
Can you bring this down?
this
a little?
property right
Slide
here.
this down so, just so we can see the,
This house.
slide it down a little. No, the other way, other way, other way.
I'm trying, the way this is, it's backwards.
Okay, turn it around, slide it, yeah, just down a little more. Now go back over. Yeah, stop.
Is this you?
Perfect, perfect.
So,
No.
no,
1, 2,
over,
3, the
one
third
more.
house.
It's the third house, because that first house has got an Old Great Road address. Yeah,
That's you.
right.
So
Okay.
basically, you're saying the driveway would come up, point right at your house?
Right. And quite honestly, I don't personally have a problem with that driveway and the meditation. You know, when we heard it was going to be a meditation and mindfulness center, we thought, this is wonderful. I thought, I'm not representing anybody but myself, wonderful. I thought that was terrific. It wasn't until the outdoor music and the weddings came in, and that's the moneymaker, right? That has to happen for this business plan to work. And it wasn't zoned for that, and the buyer should have known or knew when she bought it that that wasn't the case. But that noise is going to funnel right up that driveway, right up our driveway and into the house. If I had, for instance, several functions a week on my property with that many people, my neighbors would consider me a significant nuisance, and perhaps they do already, and they'd be right. Additionally, when events break up, people don't go quietly into the night. It's not like we've never been to weddings. We go to functions all the time. And, they linger, they carry on in the parking lot, in this case, the neighborhood. I'm happy to hear that the tent isn't going to be up, but the whole buffer zone, whether it's got a tent over it or it's a building, was created to protect neighborhoods. And when you invade that space, you sort of violate the intent of the law to keep that buffered zone. That whole function area is going to be closer than the 150-foot setback limit, even if there's no building. And I understand, for the planning board, that makes a difference. But for this board, we're talking about nuisance. And hazards, I wanted to talk about hazards. The first one is, and this has been a moving target, so if the house rules have changed, I apologize, but she told, the applicant told us there was going to be no smoking on the property. As you rightly noted, that's also true at Burke Technology, which has happened in the last 5 or 6 months. What that means is they go to the edge of the property to smoke, because smokers don't give up smoking for the day, they can't. And same thing at weddings, especially if you're drinking. And I don't smoke, and I do drink, and that's not relevant. But anyway, so they're going to, and we can hear the conversations, as I said at my office, of the Burke people, and that's just a few people, right?
Those are the ones at the end of the
Yes,
yeah.
and the cigarette butts that they leave behind. So that's a nuisance. But the hazard is that people routinely drive up and down that road, but, the speed limit is a suggestion to most drivers. They're cutting through to get to another town. It's amazing that somebody hasn't gotten hit already. Also, broken glass. Listen, whether you're serving or not, if you have a wedding, people come. They bring their own alcohol. Sometimes they hide it from you. You can have whatever house rule you want. People are going to be out there in the neighborhoods, in their cars, drinking before the weddings. I don't mean to sound so cynical, but I think that's the reality. And when the post-game festivities begin, when people get put out at 8 o'clock or whatever the time is, they're going to move to the parking lot. They're going to talk. Glass gets broken. And people who live near these things understand, and you're going to get people urinating when they have to go. They linger too long in the parking lot. We don't need that in our neighborhood. Those are hazards and nuisances. When you talk about congestion, which is another one of the things that you have to think about, that you're obliged to think about as you try to approve these things, parking, the math doesn't work out. And I appreciate he dropped from 120 to 100. The reason it was at 120 is because Article 8 calls for a minimum of 1 space for every 4 seats, and they had 120. They had it 180. It wasn't any kind of concession to go down to 120. That's every little parking spot that they could squeeze onto the lot and still maintain the impervious ratio. So now he's going to go down to 100. It's still not going to be adequate, because if you have a photographer and you have some kind of minister, justice of the peace, whatever, you have the administrator. I'm going to just say 3 caterers. For 100 people, we'll say 3. because they're gonna have to tote in all the stuff and tote it all out. So then you're gonna have a musician, or 2, or 3, or 4. You're gonna have a photographer, you're gonna have a videographer. I think I just ate up 10 of the 30 spaces, and now they're gonna have 100 people who are guests at the wedding, who have 20 spaces to split between them. So Article 7, as was rightly pointed out, calls for 1 space for every 4 seats. But it also says that you have to provide off-street parking for all your needs at your highest use. And there's no way that you can say that any use of 100 people is going to be provided for with this parking plan that they have. It specifically says that. So it's not an option for the board to consider Old Great Road, a public way, as a potential overflow. And it may be true that it's not illegal to park on Beaverbrook Road, but again, that's not for this board's consideration. The nuisance is that they are not providing for 100% parking on that parking, and it's not possible.
Parking's not part of our purview.
But it's a nuisance to us.
He's speaking to congestion.
Right, that's the reason it's here. It's true. And the reason, and they're not gonna go back to the planning board and squeeze more. It's not gonna happen because they can't, they're already over the impervious amount of space. And then another, the last, what I'm gonna speak to is substantial harm to the neighborhood, something that you have to decide on. Approving this is the financial equivalent to us as neighbors as concrete shoes. Our property values will plummet and we'll be stuck with no option to escape this unwelcome nuisance. The residential unit was eliminated, and we heard some more background on that. I would suggest also that there's no residential unit you couldn't get somebody to live in that space as it is right now, because who would want to live next to this? Would anybody? Would anybody want this in their neighborhood? I would suggest that the applicant would not want this across the street from her home in Concord. We're not different than her. We're the same. We have the same wants for peace. We're an overextended neighborhood already. We have, what little peace we have left is in the evenings and in the weekends, and that is going to dissipate. So I'm asking you to, and one other thing I just want to say. A trial period sounds like some concession, but we all know once the money is spent and that permit's out the door, it is a lot harder to say no and pull it back. So I'm just going to say that going down that road is not something that I would support for those reasons. And because frankly, I don't want to live with the nuisance for a year or trial. I don't want to put my life on a trial period, and I don't think my neighbors do either. So just ask you in conclusion to reject the special permit request and protect the integrity of the zoning laws and the Littleton way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reedy. Bruce, I'm going to ask you to take a list of all your comments back, and let me get around the room and get all the abutters first. They've been waiting. Yes, sir.
Carl Lanciani, 16 Beaverbrook Road. I spent my career in Littleton running, operating the municipal light department. And what I don't think any of you actually realize is that at the corner, that corner is the lifeline for electric service to the whole community. And if you've got cars parking in there, you can't get bucket trucks and digger trucks over cars. If something happens, you can't get your equipment in there. That means it's lights out.
What corner are you please talking about?
I'm talking,
Here, on Beaverbrook?
no, go over one right there.
Not just for everyone here on the TV, this is what he's talking about.
The substation.
The substation is up to the right as far as that line goes.
It's not on the
Up where the compass is, Sherry, to your right.
Oh, okay.
Now, that's where the substation is.
Yeah, okay, I know
And
where-
that's where we get all of our electric service.
So you're concerned about people parking on Beaverbrook?
I'm concerned about them parking on the space that is marked there, Old Beaverbrook Road.
Oh, great.
Old Great Road.
How does that connect to where the power grid is? How does Old Great Road impact the substation up there?
Because that's where the lines come down,
Okay, okay,
okay?
yeah, thank you.
So I would suggest to you that if you are going to go ahead with this plan, which sounds fine, but that you leave, and all you got to do, and now I hope all of you will do it, the next time you go up Beaverbrook Road, stop on the corner and look up, and you'll see those two poles. And they're loaded with equipment,
Thank you.
and that's what we have to get to.
Okay. I'm just going to go in order.
Yes, Michael Torella, 11 Old Great Road. I live right on that corner. And I have got so many power lines going up and down, east and west, north and south, that I don't think I could count them all. I'm surprised our house doesn't glow at night.
Excuse me.
Kurt is absolutely correct.
Is this you?
Yes.
Way down there?
To the right.
No,
To the
right.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
We should ask the electric department to get those underground.
I know, I wish I could figure out how to tap into it.
There are a lot of those underground right there.
But in addition to what Kurt was saying, I'm sure, well, I hope some of you understand that the intersection of Great Road and Beaverbrook Road is one of the most dangerous intersections in town. Just last Friday, we had another crash. Somebody trying to pull out while somebody was coming in. Now, can you imagine what that's going to be like when you have people who have been celebrating all the time for several hours in a wedding or a function and pull out and start to drive down there? So the concern is not only for personal safety, but also the fact that if anybody crashed into one of those poles, to coin Kurt's expression, lights out. In addition to that, the parking issue on Old Great Road is, I think, one that needs a lot more clarity. I believe one of our other neighbors, and I think she will speak to it, was told by the Littleton police that their son's car could not even have two wheels on Old Great Road, or he would be ticketed. And that was in October.
Okay.
So we have some great concerns about the parking, the traffic, the condition of the partygoers as they're coming out.
Okay. Next. I'm going through the room so the way can come around the back. Sorry, in the back. I was going in order of the hands up.
Justine Stedman, 17 Old Great Road.
Justine, I'm sorry, your last name?
Stedman, S-T-E-D-M-A-N.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to deal with is these special use permits. Do they run with the land or the applicant?
That's a very interesting question. It's not a special use permit, it's a special permit.
Okay.
And a special permit is granted to the land. But the beauty of special permits is that the board has the ability to condition them and establish conditions. So that, for instance, I'm sure your question is, once we open that barn door, can we have, a tiki bar there next week, or next owner? And the answer to your question is, we have the ability to establish conditions, and I think the applicant's house rules was an effort to go in that direction, to ask for the grant with conditions. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because, the board person's characteristic of gentle fashion, I don't think actually takes into account the alcohol. Usually they say, well, you could have a restaurant there, but if you have a restaurant there, you have a liquor license. And a liquor license is A, expensive, B, it's a threat to get pulled. There's no stick here with the carrot and stick here, because the caterer is responsible for the flow of the event. The caterer is responsible for procuring all alcohol. Cash bars are not permitted. That means they're not going to have a bartender watching who's drinking too much or what underage drinking is going on. They're just going to put out red and white wine on each table, and nobody's responsibility to see if there is underage drinking or if somebody is drinking to excess. And there's no liquor license to pull. It's just like, well, we'll get another caterer. That one didn't police it right. And then they said that the applicant was going to be on site for contra dances and those mindfulness, peaceful things, but I didn't understand that she was going to be on site for the weddings. Because I think the weddings, as Mike pointed out, once you put alcohol and that dangerous intersection together, it could be lights out for Littleton. That on the corner there, And in the winter, they watch that, because if that goes down, it's not just our neighborhood, it is the whole town that goes down. No lights for the whole town. Okay, going on with, they're talking about exposed beams for music, and this acoustic music outside is gonna end at 8 o'clock and move inside. But exposed beams are beautiful, but they don't really contain sound insulation very well. The other thing is weddings. It says Saturdays at 8 hours. It doesn't say 8 p.m. Those 8 hours could be 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. And whatever time you end at, you then have to have the florists, you have to have the caterers, the musicians, the photographers, all of those vendors, the limo, that are all fitting on the 30 parking spaces, because we can assume that everybody's going to go 4 to a vehicle. The parking is severely inadequate, under anybody's estimation. So I would like to know, this 8 hours, is that it, 7 p.m. to 3 a.m.? I'd like to know, like, the end date, when these events are cleared up, when everyone is gone. What are those hours?
Facetiously, I'm just going to answer that I'm planning a very large wedding at Gibbet Hill for my daughter, and it's very expensive to go past 10. They charge me by the minute after 10 o'clock. But that's another thing we could condition if we went in that direction. I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, because 8 hours could mean 7 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Nobody's going to let a wedding go until 3 p.m. on my watch. I mean, 3 a.m. on my watch.
As long as,
Okay.
it's restricted, especially the alcohol's a problem.
Okay. I think I'm at Kim now, and then gotta come around.
Hi, Kim Alley at 27 Beaverbrook Road. I think what's important to note here is it's the large-scale functions that are really objected to by the neighborhood overall. And I heard comments from the board initially that, parking is not our consideration here, and the list looks good now to me, but what I want to draw you back to is the purpose of the bylaws. Right, in 173.1, the purpose is to keep our town a good place in which to live and work. Living applies to the neighborhood. And we go to the special permit criteria, and that criteria includes no significant nuisance, hazard, or congestion. Congestion is parking. Congestion is the traffic. It involves all these considerations that the neighborhood is bringing to you on a large-scale event, and that's really the focus here. And we have been presented with a list of new options to make this financially viable for the owner. She's initially came and proposed the meditation center, which was warmly welcomed by the neighborhood. We'd love to see that property restored. It's a lovely alternative to what could be there on dump trucks and loud industrial type of businesses. But what she then changed it to make it financially viable for her is to bring these large scale, and that's what all of this is tailored to. And while the modifications are appreciated, they're not getting it there to really address those. And I heard Bruce reference the unwelcome attempts to speak with the neighborhood, and I'm assuming he's referring that to me because the owner, Miss Gagnon, reached out to me this week, and quite to the contrary, I told her I'm happy to talk to her. And at no point did she ever talk about the reduction even to 100. What I wouldn't do is go to her house or the property at 7 o'clock tonight before the meeting. That I couldn't do with my own schedule. We have been willing to talk, but at the end of the day, what I did explain to her was that it is the large-scale function that's objected to. And in response to that, and I brought the email, she sent me an email as to her proposals for this concern. And I have a few copies for the board if you want to hand it around. Listing the various functions, and this email is from Monday of this week. I certainly didn't hear about the reduction in the scale, and hopefully that's all been part of this exchange that I have had with her. But when it comes to the parking issue, her response was, I will always make parking a primary focus, and I will want anyone booking events over 60 people to give me a parking plan as part of their contract. Carpooling seems like a very easy solution for many, since most people know each other at small or medium weddings. This is not a plan. I mean, they're coming to the planning board and to you, looking for a large-scale event without plans. You've heard this area, this road, Beaver Brook to Great Road, is a death trap intersection. Since we moved in 2006, there have been 3 significant accidents that we've heard, and we're right at the Westford line at our home. You add the traffic of a single event weekly there to that intersection on a Saturday night where you already have to be concerned with the alcohol and the driving, and that poses significant problems to the town all the way around, in addition to all the other concerns you've heard about the parking in that area. Quite simply, it's great that they want to reduce it to 100, but even at 4 people to a car is the accommodation they're making. We know that's not the reality. I can't tell you the last wedding or event like that I went to that everyone showed up with 4 people in the car. The reality is 100 people is going to be 50 cars on for the attendance alone, and then you add the band and the caterers and things like that. The large scale portion of this is really what has got to be reduced. Another function proposed, but not a wedding reception, not a large scale. And in her email, she fully acknowledges she's looking at bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, rehearsal dinners, retirement parties, large scale events. And that's, I think, speaking globally for the neighborhood, from my understanding, really where the objections are coming in, and we would want some significant restrictions to bring that number down to be practical. So.
Thank you. And now, sir, you've been patient.
14 Beaverbrook Road. My name is Alfred Watson. And I'm going to discuss the potential traffic problems for that intersection that is part of this. And I have drawings of that intersection.
Thank you. Pass these out. Mr. Watson, can I say you play piano better than you draw? He's one of our local talented musicians, and if you haven't heard him play, you must. He's amazing on the keyboard.
Carla lives next door.
Is he noisy?
With the windows open?
One of my main concerns, which I feel has not been adequately discussed, is traffic safety at the intersection of Route 119, Beaverbrook Road, and 547 Great Road. With a large number of cars leaving 547 Great Road, turning left or right onto Beaverbrook Road. In the scenario of 3 cars waiting in line to turn from Beaverbrook Road onto Route 119, the 3rd car in that line would be blocking cars leaving Great Road, waiting to turn left towards Route 119. Picture up to 30 cars, now it's 20, waiting to get into this line. Unless there is a policeman directing traffic, this result could be chaotic. In addition, drivers of cars leaving Great Road, one of the events that might be affected by drinking liquor at the event, might not be able to deal with the situation in a calm and reasonable manner. Next, let's consider the scenario of cars turning from Route 119 west onto Beaverbrook Road. Here again, it takes 3 car lanes to reach and block the cars waiting to leave Great Road to turn left or right onto Beaverbrook Road. Those drivers making the turn from Route 119 west onto Beaverbrook Road, and it could be nighttime, may not be aware of the approaching situation of cars leaving Great Road. Now, weather conditions also could compound a negative effect on all the above problems. I feel that this consideration as stated should warrant a denial of the appeal for the expansion of 547 Great Road. Thank you.
Based upon the applicant's presentation, it did not appear that the traffic would be leaving Old Great Road. Am I wrong about that?
It'd be a mix.
Okay.
We're split. We have
Okay.
13 here and 17 at the drive.
Okay.
Old Great Road?
Any other butter comments? Anybody else want to speak to this
Could you
application?
explain that again? I'm sorry.
So, go ahead. I said I didn't think anyone would be on Old Great Road, and he said, no, there's
We're talking about Great Road now, right?
Old Great Road.
No, traffic is coming from 547 Great Road.
I understand, but your diagram shows traffic leaving Old Great Road. And
Oh, it says Old Great, but I mistook that, yeah.
so my question was,
No,
will
that-
traffic be exiting on Old Great
That
Road?
is-
And he answered yes.
Please, the Old Great Road was put in there, my mistake. I assumed that Old Great Road was this, and then across the road was a continuation.
Right.
That's Great Road, 547 Great Road. You see the address there,
Right,
all right?
yeah.
Now, that makes all the difference, because they have to cross Beaverbrook to get in line, which is 3 cars, and how many cars waiting between them?
Okay, so I'd like to sum up. I like to try to do that after I've heard from everybody, and I like to try to narrow the issues to see if there's any common ground at all, and I would like to sum up for a minute. What I heard for nuisance, hazards, congestion, and substantial harm sounds to me like many of the issues can be addressed with very strict conditions on this permit, and one of the applicant's proposals was to have a police presence, a police detail at every function. What I didn't hear was whether we can address the parking congestion in a satisfactory manner. I do agree with someone who said, when was the last time you saw 4 people to a car at a wedding? I do agree that that's an issue. I do agree with your statement that you've got all sorts of wait service that will also come with vehicles. The band's going to be 4 or 5 people with vehicles. I do agree with all that. Relative to this function and what you are trying to prevent in this neighborhood, I'm not hearing that this use, if managed and if controlled, is so horrific to this neighborhood. It sits way back off the road. It's a lovely use of an old historic building. Tasteful and decorum type events are beautiful. The nicest wedding I've been to is at the Adventist church, when people visit and mingle rather than dance and hoo-ha and get all excited. And it sounds to me like the ambience of this facility is one that would not be compatible with a heavy metal band and a blues band. This facility and what it represents is only going to attract those kinds of users that would be a quieter crowd. Now, I do know that there's drinking, and I hear you all about the drinking. A police detail can take care of some of that, and the smoking thing you could take care of by having a smoking area. Almost everything you object to can be controlled with, as far as I can see, some permitting, and the use is allowed in the zone. The several uses are allowed in the zone. So I'm troubled right now by the parking, and a couple of other points that I wrote down was definitely there needs to be police detail. Definitely there needs to be a restriction on the hours. As I said, 10 or 11 o'clock is plenty late enough for any wedding, anytime. They mostly start at 4 or 5, especially if you're going to have your ceremony outside before sunset. And I'm just worried, I'm worried about, traffic and congestion, you're not influencing me, and this is only because with a long history on this board and projects as large as the comprehensive permit project on 15 Great Road, the other one on Village on the Common, we've had extensive traffic studies in front of us. The Point was another one. These traffic people report de minimis and negligible traffic increase on projects that have 108 units exiting at 8 in the morning. I don't know if traffic studies are bizarre or what, but you're not going to convince me that a wedding or a function for 80 to 100 people, let's say 100 people, you're not going to convince me that that traffic entering and leaving for the hours of the wedding is going to be so damaging to the traffic that already exists on Great Road. I do agree that the hazards of drinking and combining that are real hazards. And I do agree that the parking is a real hazard. I think everything else can be managed. Decibel limitations, and I know you all said bands have louder decibels than the normal range in this neighborhood, but you have to take into account, when you're taking into account decibels, the insulation in the building and the travel distance on the decibels. I think we can manage that with the decibel limitation. I think we can manage the end time. I think we can manage the police detail. I think we can manage putting an awful lot of these house rules into a conditional permit. The other thing is, on your liquor license, you can't just open your house up to 100 people and serve liquor. There has to be a liquor license, and there are ABCC regulations for that, and selectmen regulations for that. So your comment about liquor is just not valid, because they can't just willy-nilly have liquor at this function that the caterer brings in without control.
The caterer has to have.
Right here, that's what it says.
What are you reading from?
I'm reading from, he gave you just recently, Soaring Hawk Meditation Center House Guidelines. Nowhere does it say that they intend to get a liquor license. They're saying the caterer is responsible for procuring all alcohol, cash bars are not permitted. So
But the
they-
caterer has to get the liquor license for the facility in every instance.
And then when the caterer, so now when there's a caterer, okay, and they just leave the liquor out on the table, and there's underage drinking, and there's drinking to excess.
No, they can't.
There's no liquor license to pull.
The
It's just
ABC
get rid of
Caterer
that
No.
catering
use license.
No, the ABCC is very, very strict. I know a little bit about liquor license, very strict about this. They don't even allow that kind of situation on a licensed facility. They cover every single contingency. You're still looking at his house rules.
This is what we're getting, this is what they're planning.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they can't just plan what they want. They have to get a liquor license and get
caterers
approved.
do.
Who grants the liquor license?
The Board of
caterers.
Selectmen first, in the first instance, and then the ABCC has to approve it. Two layers of liquor licensing.
Can they do like BYOB without a license?
Not to my knowledge in this town. In Massachusetts,
You
yep.
can in a private home, but
If I may, the idea here of the caterer responsible for alcohol, cash bars not permitted, was an idea that she took from another site, a Perkins House, the Lynn House, I think it's called, in Waltham. Those are the guidelines that they have. If it's such that you want it to be a cash bar that the caterer runs, that's fine with her. Those type of conditions, she was trying to go with what the standard was, or what she thought the standard was. It's not an open bar. We understand that there are permits. I explained at the planning board that we have multiple levels of permits that need to be done. You have to get a victualer's license. The caterer has to have a victualer's license. They have to have the permit through the Board of Selectmen and as well as through the BBC.
And
We understand all that.
if this hearing gets continued, I will double check that before we make a decision on that, because that's obviously a critical component of the decision. I'm not downplaying it. I just think that the facts that we have in front of us aren't accurate, okay?
And a police detail will help keep down people hanging out by their cars and drinking and breaking bottles and even lingering drunk on the grounds. If you have an active police detail, and I would say that the situation of a lot of cars exiting onto 119 certainly would warrant that, especially at night after a function where alcohol is present. So, having a police detail there for, say, any function that's over a certain number of people
certainly whether there's alcohol present or not. Now, you got to keep in mind, most of these functions, though, aren't going to happen during rush hour. So a lot of the traffic will have died down.
I'm sorry, you're wrong. The new trend is to have Friday night weddings at 5 o'clock.
But they're not in at 5, they don't leave till 10, is what she's saying.
8 hours late, but when everyone's getting out of the industry is when the 100 people plus all the vendors are gonna be trying to get on that property.
We can limit the hours to like Gibbet Hills and say that the noise has to be done by 10:30, and therefore that the facility is going to say 10 o'clock and charge them by the minute for going any, you know.
Let's back
that
up.
kind
I
of
was
thing.
just putting out some features, and I still think the parking is the biggest issue, because I think this board has the ability to control in a manner satisfactory, perhaps after some negotiation, we have the ability to control everything else. And I invite the neighbors to consider negotiated conditions if the board appears to be leaning toward permitting the use with some conditions. And usually what I do after this is I poll the board and see where the board is leaning, because you don't want an all-or-nothing decision. Nobody in this room, not even the applicant, wants an all-or-nothing decision. So let's see where the board is leaning, and let's see if we can't kind of come together as neighbors and as a group to see if we can reach any common ground. Go ahead, Bruce.
Just a couple of real quick things. The applicant, regardless of whether they get the function of special use permit, a special permit, will be making the modifications to the building. I've heard people say they're only doing this because of the weddings. That's false. I've told this at the planning board, I'm telling you here at the ZBA, I'll tell the butters again and again. The modifications to the building are happening for the use of the meditation services, for the use of the mindfulness, which we already have permits for. The driveway access we have permits for. We're going to have machines moving on site within the next week under the permits we have to start removing invasive plants and starting with the landscaping and getting the stuff done that they're allowed to do under the existing permits. We're very happy with the limitation, as I said at the very beginning, on hours. 8 hours is listed as a time frame that is a typical rent period because it shows that you have full control of the site for the day. That's your, if you rent it, you have it for the day. We have no problem with an 11 o'clock lights out or 11 o'clock out. You're talking 10:30 with the music down and whatever. You know, those type of conditions are fine. There's discussion that these guidelines have no basis or grounds for things. I've offered this up as part of our options for conditions. We will take and work with the conditions that are listed as the guidelines as being conditions, as well as those which I put into the letter. There's discussion that we can't do more parking on the site. We're at 16.5%, call it 17. The zoning district that this is in allows me to go up to 30% coverage. That's almost double the coverage that I have of all impervious area. That includes the buildings, that includes the paving, that includes everything. We can put more parking on the site. We're trying not to, because we want this to be a smaller use facility. We don't want it to be a major use facility. We're anticipating the small venues. If there were a large one under the previous application, it would require additional parking off-site. And we've eliminated the tent, and we've eliminated those things. That's it. I just want to make sure everybody understands. Activity is going to happen here. We are moving forward on this project.
It's 9:40. Everyone's been heard once. I would like to take one more minute to talk about the size. I saw on the plans that the facility addition and this area that you would be using for functions is proposed to be 32 by 42.
That's correct.
And I'd like you to double check that.
Plus a 10 by 20 area off the edge of it.
So Jeff and I were in the back room hiding out when we weren't allowed to be in this room, and he paced off a 32 by 42 area in the
Council on Aging room.
multi-purpose room next door. And I almost think we should take a little field trip in there to get a visual of what 32 by 42 looks like. Let's look at that for a minute.
Field trip?
Yeah, little field trip.
Love field trips.
What do we have here? We don't have 100 everybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Count how many people we
How
are.
big's this room?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Okay, this room's about 40 feet long.
It's not good because it's visually too big. We got to go look in here.
Actually, this room is.
Come on, field trip.
Yeah, this is 40 by
Mr. Joyce, come on.
40 by, what, 18 maybe? No, it's over 20.
They could provide for grass parking without any more impervious.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, if there was some designated.
I would love one, please.
Could I make a point of fact when people come back about the statement you made about the parking?
Yes, but also I said the next thing I wanted to do was to poll the board because the hour's getting late. We've heard a lot.
I understand that, but you threw out an inaccuracy.
Yeah, I'll let you have one moment to do that. Thank you, everybody, for indulging me. Okay, no, I'm just going to, while everybody's settling.
Now I see why.
There you go. Okay, while everybody's settling back in, a couple of quick comments. I have 2 points of clarification from this side of the room, and then I promised you I was going to poll the board, and then my intention is to let me do that, and then I'll tell you what my intention is. Go ahead.
Just as far as the parking and being able to double it, what the bylaw actually says is they need a special permit to go above 15%, they're at 16%.
Right.
And it can't go above 30, whether they want to give a special permit or not. It's not by right. You do not by right have the ability to double the space. So I'd just like to be clear about that.
Parking is not our...
Only in that it creates a nuisance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay, and yours?
And my thing is, you talk about police details, they typically handle traffic. They don't handle going inside and seeing, you know, if there's underage drinking or if someone's drinking to excess. A police detail typically does not handle that. So if you're saying that there's going to be, you know, because there can be weddings for 100 people, who's going to be in charge of monitoring that? At least she should be on site, so somebody is responsible when somebody overdrinks and goes out and kills the family of 4. The dram shop act will go back on her if she's on site.
Well, it will if she's off-site too, but,
It'd be easier if she's on site.
okay, another clarification.
Hi, Trifina Reedy, number 4 Beaverbrook Road. I just want to reiterate the noise nuisance that could happen. We all know what a nightmare it is with the tiki and that side of town, and how throughout the summer, all they hear is the loud music. So you're saying, I'm fine with it going till 10 or 10:30 or 11. I'm not fine with that. I'm in a residential area across the street with 3 young children. I work on Sundays. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. That, to me, is a hardship, and it's a nuisance. And I don't think that belongs in a residential or abutting a residential area. And I'd like to say, if that precedence is set,
Don't
what's
lose
gonna
sight
happen?
of the fact this property is in an IA zone. That's
I
the
understand
difference.
that.
That's
I
the
understand that,
difference.
but-
So it's not a precedent. They're entitled to...
but it is a
do this.
nuisance
Yeah, okay.
to the residential area that it abuts.
And I'm hearing you say that.
Okay,
I'm hearing
and that-
you.
I just want
And
that to be clear.
And your husband, I think it's your
Yes,
husband.
my husband.
Or your handsome brother.
Who speaks very well, by the way, should run for board.
Forget that.
Make you a selectman.
I'm just concerned about turning it into another tiki.
The point, and I'm very worried about that too. When I left here, I was here Thursday night, I heard you all, and some others who aren't here tonight. And as I said, I was at a house party the next night, and I got an earful from everybody. I heard everyone fearful that it would turn into a tiki, and I am very sympathetic to that metamorphosis of this.
Yes, and I don't want to feel like I live at a campground where quiet hours start at 10 o'clock at night. Honestly, I know what I'm abutting.
We're not asking you to put up with outdoor music and noise like the tiki till 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
We're being requested to approve an indoor insulated function inside until 10 or 11 at
Right,
night.
with then the noise and traffic that comes with people leaving a function like that. That's also
I
a
have neighbors
concern.
that get up at 5 a.m. and walk, and they love to stand outside my window and jibber jabber for about an hour after their walk.
But that's
and
not
I'm
car
very
door
sympathetic
slamming,
to
it's
that.
not drunk
Yeah,
people
no.
staggering around. So that's my concern
No, I
too,
hear.
regardless of whether the noise is leaking from the building.
I would like to poll the board and see what the board feels, because you've heard my points, I think you've heard Cheryl's points, you've heard Bruce's points. Let's go with Jeff, please.
I guess I would focus on the bylaw which says significant nuisance. And there is nothing that I've heard here that strikes me as a significant nuisance. In terms of your point about that, they've agreed to stop outdoor music at 8. I've heard all of these hypotheticals about drunken people running into light poles and this and that. I look at the point, which is going to have 10 restaurants with people drinking, and I lived in the common area, and we have, on the common, with the traffic that goes on there, and we have had no major problems with drunk people.
It's not a
There's always
Let my
a
board
possibility.
speak. We all let you
There
speak,
is
please.
always a possibility. There's always a possibility. But there's nothing inherent in this. I'm really happy that the building's going to be saved. I think you could have had a warehouse building, you could have had a manufacturing building, you could have had a lot, and this is a meditation center. You seem to be skeptical about the applicant's intentions, But that's why they're offering a conditional special permit. That they come, they get out of line, they come back and they get their hand slapped. Or if taken away. That's really sort of unprecedented in terms of what we're typically used to dealing with. In terms of noise, our building inspector, who's the code enforcement official, has a decibel meter. And we have heard in this board some pretty substantial noise complaints. And some of them have been machinery for lawn care, some have been manufacturing noise. And he is very experienced in assessing noise levels. And you file a complaint with him, he comes out, takes the meter, and if it's over the the bylaw, he has an enforcement order. It's not something that doesn't happen. It's something that you have an opportunity to take advantage of.
John, are you done?
Yes.
John?
I'm more sympathetic with the neighbors on this, and I mean, you have a group of people here that are going to be inconvenienced from what I'm seeing versus one person that's going to get their wishes. But the architect said they're moving forward and building this building regardless. The thing is, I don't see why this particular building is so important that it gets built when the people in the neighborhood aren't being satisfied. I mean, every decision we've made over the years, we've come to an agreement with the neighborhood before we've moved forward on all these 40B projects. We've had the neighbors on board before we moved forward with any of our decisions. And I don't feel that the neighbors have been satisfied by any means here. And I think the applicant has to come back a couple more times at least before I would even be on board with proving any of this. That's all I have to say.
Told you I was going to miss you. Cheryl?
I'm worried about this meditation center being financially viable. I'm worried about it being successful. I am worried that if they're not, that what you'll get is the building torn down and possibly some kind of, as others have said, some kind of manufacturing. We've dealt with some pretty horrific issues in this board from Stoneyard and the folks that are in the trailer park, the noise levels that they've had to deal with, the problems that the dust, the problems that can arise in an industrial A zone. Unfortunately, you abut an industrial A zone. And if we make this project financially unfeasible for this owner, then I'm worried that what else you might get there. And I'm sorry, but I think that this is a really good use if we can limit lots of things. We can limit decibels, and we can limit a lot of things, and we can write a bunch of things into a special permit. And we can try to protect you, but I don't know if they go away. I'm worried about what, it's careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Thank you. Rod?
I have a little concern over the 100-person activities. I'm kind of torn on it right now. I think we can probably cover a lot with the conditions, but even though it's more the planning board, not our preview about the parking, I do have two issues with the parking. One, I don't think it's adequate. Two, nobody's raised the issue that the two lots are separated. They're not connected. So that means somebody driving into one, finding that it's full, are going to have to drive back out onto Beaver Brook and Old Great Road and into the next one, just adding for the, the traffic issues in the area. So I'd like to see, before we make a decision, I'd like to see what the planning board does in terms of the site plan.
That's a good point.
That is a good point.
That is a good point.
Patrick?
I'm comfortable with this project. The owner seems to be bending over backwards to accommodate the size of the project. I think she's going to be an asset for that neighborhood. I've lived in Littleton maybe about 6 years now, and I've gone by that house. And I think that she just, I think she'll be a good asset for the neighborhood. Having a police detail now there is going to be a plus. No. The same way with liquor. She seems to be wanting minimum liquor. As far as noise goes, I think that she's conscious of the neighborhood, of the people. The fact that it's going to be a meditation event, that's going to keep, I think, it would keep people looking for drinking to a minimum. If she has a handicapped child who's blind, she's just, she seems like a good person.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Even though I tend to be a liberal Democrat,
You don't have to admit it.
I do believe in property rights. A lot of times on this board, we've sort of stopped people from doing what I felt you should be able to do on your own property. In this particular case, it's zoned. There's some discussion as to whether or not some of the things they want to do should be allowed. But in general, that sort of predisposes me to saying, yeah, let her do what's within the rules on her property. With that said, I don't know how many nights, nice warm night, you're trying to sleep, the window's open. It doesn't have to be 40 dB, 35 dB, 30 dB. It doesn't take a lot of noise to disturb a neighborhood. With that said, I think a little bit more refining of the rules or the regulations, or what would be the house rules that would be built into the permit, would help address some of those. I know I disagree with a couple of things you said, that it's not going to attract the heavy metal band. You don't know that. From what I understand, if you don't book a wedding place a year, 2 years in advance, you're not going to get it. Somebody with a heavy metal band, they say, look, it's the only place available, let's do it. Even though it has a meditation center and all that, there's no limitation on the types of partiers that are going to go there. So it could get very loud music, could get, loud people. I don't think that's a reason not to vote against it, but I think it needs to be addressed. With that said, I'm just wondering how many weddings these days, especially one this small, would even have a live band. Most likely they would have a DJ. Okay, I don't go to many weddings.
DJs can crank up the music.
Well, the point is, it's a lot easier to tell a DJ to turn it down than a band.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if I'm trying to throw stuff out there of letting wedding functions go on, but try to minimize the noise. And we can do that with the type of music allowed, the hours of operation, things like that. The other thing, parking, I don't think there's enough parking spots on the site plan. With that said, I don't think it's the end of the world if people did park on Old Gray Road. So, yeah, maybe a few more parking spots on the land itself, but parking on Old Gray Road, I don't see what that would affect.
There are a whole bunch of
Let the
people.
board members finish.
So that's, like I said, I kind of on the fence here. I'd like to see a few more controls to address the neighbors' concerns, because, maybe you should have thought about it before you moved right next door to an industrial area. You got to do your own due diligence before you buy something. I know when we moved to Littleton 25 years ago, there were a couple of nice houses that didn't know what was going to happen next door. We didn't buy the house. Sometimes, you find out about those things soon. Sometimes you don't find out about them till later.
Okay, thank you. 10 o'clock, it's after 10 o'clock. We've gone with this for a long time. Everybody had a chance to be heard. This is what I'm hearing and what I would like to propose. I'm hearing that alcohol is a serious concern and that we should check into the alcohol rules and regulations for any facility or function which proposes to sell alcohol, whether it's a cash bar, an open bar, a catered event, or whatever. So that's going to come back to the next meeting, and we're going to have to continue because there are so many open-ended questions. I'm hearing that parking is a concern that's not our purview, and I understand that there's a continued hearing to the planning board. Fortunately, they meet again before we do. So I want to hear what the planning board does and how they weigh in on parking vis-a-vis these reduction in numbers, because I know what they felt about parking last week, but they haven't seen these reduced numbers. I have some interesting questions as you all spoke about this. Bless you. That this proposal is for accessory use to the principal use of the Reiki function. And I'm wondering if there's some way that we can keep this from growing or from being passed on to the next owner by conditioning our decision on it being an accessory use to a meditation use solely. That way, if a next owner comes along and says, I don't want the meditation part anymore, I want weddings 7 nights a week, they can't get it. And I think that's an interesting path I'd like to go down. Maybe I'll write town council and ask council to weigh in at the next meeting, because that may be a real surefire insurance policy for everyone here, that this principal use is meditation and the functions have to be truly accessory to that meditation notion and idea, and not a heavy metal band wedding and a last minute, oh, I can't find another venue, so let me have a raucous good time in that neighborhood. Okay? Other things, the police detail, I liked somebody who said, well, the police detail will just be on the roadway, but I think there needs to be some sort of a on-premise management for the alcohol consumption during the functions. I've got no problem with that. Whether you get a private duty or the police, I don't think that really matters. I hear you loud and clear about that. I think we can add that in there. But the bottom line is, you all brought to the table some interesting concerns, real concerns, viable concerns.
And good drawings.
And good drawings. The applicant heard you. I think board members weighed in, and you've heard what we all feel about this. We're not all on one side of the table or the other. And it's 10:10, so I'd like to have somebody move that we continue this hearing till the next meeting, and that we have the planning board give us feedback at that time. Anyone else want to speak before I do that?
Bruce has a question.
Bruce.
Just one. Mark alluded to some additional conditions that we bring forward, and I can see possibly a couple based on some of the comments that you just made. But if you have other comments or other conditions that you'd like to see, please throw them out there through the board, through Shelley, through something to me, so that I can try to put something together. You guys talked about the alcohol license for the caterer. Their license is on the line. They have to have a license, and they can't serve alcohol to just anybody. But if there's a thing to have somebody else inside, if that's a standard operating procedure rather than their own policing, that's possible. John, I just want to point out, the things that we were looking to build are not for these uses. The things that we're looking to build are what's been previously approved for the meditation use. The neighborhood was in favor of the meditation use. We're not going against that. They just need to get things moving forward so that they can be in business from the meditation uses and that stuff by the next calendar year.
I have no problem.
Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand, we're not looking to shove something down somebody's throat. We understand that if we don't get, my client understands if she doesn't get the use for the special permit for the functions, then she doesn't have the functions here, but she does have what she has previously approved.
We should hang on to these packets, right? Because we're not going to get new ones, right?
That is correct.
The 40Bs, we
Okay.
kept getting new
I'll
ones.
entertain a motion to continue this hearing for 1 month.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we continue to next month.
And do we have anything scheduled yet, Shelley?
No.
So let's make it at 7:30.
I'll second the motion.
July
July
16th.
July 16th?
Yeah. And if we do get something scheduled, you can schedule it 20 minutes after, but warn the people that we're going to do this first and that they should check with
I'd
us.
like to give at least half an hour.
No, I'm going to give 20 minutes. If for any reason this gets pulled off the table, continued one more time, or withdrawn, if for any reason, then we will call the applicant scheduled and tell them we're on time. If not, the applicant scheduled can be told that we're going to go probably another hour. Okay? You can't second my motion, no.
I seconded
I do
it
that all the
already.
time from that seat. Cheryl seconded that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. I do want to thank, opposed, no. I do want to thank everyone who came out. I know it's late, I know you have families, I know you have other things to do at night. I see how important this is to you. Don't think I don't. Motion to close, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
No, I can't make it, you gotta make it.
Cheryl made it, John seconded it.
John made a motion to adjourn. Second?
Jeff, second.
I'll second it.
Who said I'll second?
I'll second it.
Mark
did.
seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Boy, I've never gone down to church and send on this.
Still working?